Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063, The Game. No Jared once again today. Out today and tomorrow. Jake Lyman in with you. We'll be joined by Teron Davenport starting at 2:30 for the rest of the show today. And then all day tomorrow as well from 2 to 6. Jake and TD usually only from 6 to 7 on Fridays. You get us for almost 8 hours here on Thursday and Friday. We are broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Ian Safar is here as well. Ian, how's it going?
Good, Jake. How are you today, man?
I'm doing good. We get 30 minutes here to just hang out. I know TD's making his way over from practice, so
Yes, sir.
We'll have some fun here. I was joking before we went on air that since I get to be Jared for 30 minutes, what else are we going to talk about except for Rand Carthon's job status? And that actually is where we're going to lead off the show today. That's the big question around the Titans heading into this final month of the season. One of two, I think. I think the two main points that everybody's looking at through this final month of the season is what changes are the Titans going to make with leadership, and is Will Levis going to be the starting quarterback in 2025? We kind of went through the Will Levis scenario yesterday with Nick Keizer and Nick Frazier and went through all of the different scenarios and kind of showed you that, hey, maybe it might be better to keep Will Levis for another year. We'll figure that one out when March rolls around, but much closer to finding out whether Rand Carthon is going to be back for his third season. Probably about a month until Black Monday, and that's usually when you see all of those things go down. I know Vrabel was on a Tuesday, and we could see it be a couple of days down the road, but probably about a month until we find out Rand Carthon's job status. And Amy Adams-Strunk has a big decision to make, because if you do fire Rand Carthon, this is now 3 straight off seasons where you're getting rid of a GM or a head coach. And I can see it going either way. I'm not on Jared's bandwagon yet of cleaning house, and I know he said that he would let the new GM pick the head coach, whether it's Brian Callahan or not. I think Callahan gets another year. I really doubt Amy wants to completely clean house. I'd say Rand's about 50-50. And I think the question that has to be asked about Rand is, can he turn it around in one offseason? Because this team is probably going to win no more than 5 games this year. So you're going to go 6-11 your first year. At most 5-12, I would say, in your second year. Could be as bad as 3-14. There's a chance they lose all 4 of these games down the stretch. Are you really going to let a guy get a 4th year if he goes 6-11 or worse in 3 straight years? I don't think so. So I think Amy Adams-Strunk, you're going to fire him after this year or after next year, unless things turn around in quick fashion next year. So I don't know. How much can you really improve this roster in one offseason? I don't know if you can get to 8 or 9 wins next year.
I mean, given where they're at right now, it seems a bit extreme, but there's always worst to first. We played this in the offseason. And so
there's always one team.
Is
it going to be you, though?
You never know, but they'd have some work to do, that's for sure.
And it felt like the big offseason this year was supposed to be the one where you turn it around quickly. Okay, we went 7-10, 6-11. Now we're going to get back to being in the playoff hunt. Well, you took a big step back. Can this team win 4 or 5 more games next year? Because if Rand Carthon, again, if he goes 5-12, 6-11 next year, you're not going to keep around a GM who wins 14, 15, 16 games in 3 seasons. He's going to get fired after next year if they don't improve and at least contend for a playoff spot. So how much better can this team get in one offseason? You've got about $70 million in cap space. And I know I'm not supposed to say cap space on this show.
Yeah, better watch out.
I know. Jared might text into the or call in and say, you don't talk about the cap on my show unless you're calling it fake. I believe the cap is real. I think it is definitely malleable. You can manipulate it much more than many other sports.
Yes.
And we're going to talk to TD when he comes in because I know he's all fired up about Juan Soto. Baseball, of course, is the one with no salary cap where you can actually pay a guy $765 million.
Yeah, might as well go to a bill.
Yeah, exactly. And there's no ramifications whatsoever.
No second thoughts.
I'm sure there is a luxury tax in baseball, so you do have to pay a little extra, but those owners don't care. If you're going to shell out $750 million for a player, you don't care about the little extra money you're going to have to pay on top. But I do believe the cap is real in the NFL. I do think that it can be moved. But you've got $70 million in cap space heading into the offseason. I was looking at the cap before the show, and that's about what it's going to be. There's not really anybody that you can cut and save a whole lot of money. I'm sure there's a few, like I saw NPF. I think you could save like $2 million if you cut him. I think that probably would be something they'd look into, but it's not like 2 or 3 years ago when you had Lawan and some of those other big contracts.
And you're just knocking 10 mil off.
Yeah, you could
off
just cut him. It was like $1 million in dead cap, and you could knock off $10-12 million off of your cap bill. So there's not a ton of that. It's going to be about 70 million. So that can get you some pretty good pieces in free agency. I don't really know what's out there in free agency in terms of what your needs are. Is there a starting quality right tackle out there in free agency? I don't know. There's probably a wide receiver out there, but I'd be more inclined to draft one. You could probably get an edge rusher, but 70 million can get you a few pieces. You're only going to have 2 real premium picks in this draft. Probably going to be in the top 10 in the first and second round, which that's 2 top 40 picks. Those are both good. But you don't have a third round pick. You traded that for L'Jarius Sneed. Can with 70 million in cap space, which that could get you 2 big pieces in free agency and maybe a couple other supplementary ones. And then 2 top 40 picks. Maybe you trade back, pick up another high draft pick, and you're getting
right now they're scheduled for 6 and 37.
Yeah, so pretty much the same as last year. You move up 1 spot
and 104. So still only 2 picks in the top 100.
Right. So there's not a whole lot out there. Do we think that those resources can add 5 wins to this team and put you into a playoff contending situation? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. And I think that question is what Amy Adams Strunk has to be looking at because, again, are you going to keep Rand Carthon for the long haul? That has to be the decision this year because I think if you're heading into next year saying, hey, let's give him 1 more year, how realistic is it that he's going to turn it around in one offseason? I don't think it's all that realistic, and you're probably going to fire him anyway. So why let him use those resources? And I know Jared's talked about this before, that the only way he wants Ran and Chad Brinker to come back is if they don't get to pick the quarterback. And I agree with that. But why would you let them use a top 5, 6, 7 pick too if you don't really believe in them for the long term? And unless Amy really believes that they are on the right track and they're turning this thing around, I think you have to make a move. If she does believe it, then, she's tying her wagon to Rand Carthon at that point, because if you fire him a year later, you just let him use some premium assets that you had this offseason, and it didn't end up working out, at least in the short term. And now you're bringing in a guy, and I know Jared talks about this all the time, that, you bring in another GM, those aren't his draft picks anymore. And you kind of have to start over. I know most of that's at the quarterback position, but there's a lot of why let Rand Carthon continue with his vision when a new guy's going to come in and he's going to completely flip it on its head. You have needs pretty much everywhere. Wide receiver, I'd say, is a pretty big need. I was talking to D-Mace as he was making his way out of the studio that Ridley is fine. Obviously, you signed him to a big deal. He's going to be around next year. NWI, I think you should extend him, and I think he should be your wide receiver 3. But you've probably got to spend some sort of assets on a wide receiver 2 in free agency or pick a wide receiver early in the draft, because the last top 3-round pick you used on wide receiver that wasn't Treylon Burks, and I don't know if I even count Treylon Burks because you didn't gain a wide receiver with that pick. You just had a net 0. You traded away A.J. Brown and you added Treylon Burks. It's a net nothing. So the last time you picked an early round wide receiver, was it Corey Davis?
Yeah.
No, sorry, A.J. Brown. But again, you traded him away.
Davis.
And then Corey Davis and Taywan Taylor.
He was in the 3rd round.
It's like you got to invest in some young wide receivers. You look at a lot of these teams that are having success across the league, they've got young wide receivers coming out of the draft that are making plays for them. So I just don't know if you want to have Rand come back, and if you have to use an early pick on wide receiver, you probably need one on tackle. You need to go find an edge rusher somewhere to play across from Harold Landry. You probably need safety. You probably need tight end. Like, do we want Rand to pick all of those if they're probably not going to turn this team into a contender next year. I don't know. And I think a big part of this is quarterback play. We'll get to that in the next segment. But first, let's head to our phone line. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. If you want to text or call, our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Tristan wants to chime in about Rand Carthon. Tristan, go ahead.
Hey, I know, like, I wouldn't be a great GM, but if I trade down, I would like to help out the Titans. I would get the tight end from Michigan, Colston Loveland, and then I can get some more picks, and then I would get, like, a Cam Scatterboo running back, and Higgins from Iowa State, and a tackle, and then Kyle McCord, and then, like, David Neal from Kansas. He has like 1,000 yards in the 4th round and a defensive end in the 4th round. And Danny Stillman, and that's about it.
I like the plan. I mean, I'm wondering if Tristan went over to the like NFL mock draft simulator and just ran through one there.
It's possible.
I'm not sure. I think Jared would have some very strong thoughts about taking a tight end in the 1st round and a running back in the 2nd round. As he said there with Loveland from Michigan.
Probably shouldn't do that. But
I think he's a very good player, but I don't know if you're taking a tight end in the 1st round, he's got to be Brock Bowers. Like, he's got to be what Brock Bowers has been.
And, it'd be interesting to see if the Titans do end up picking 6th overall where they are right now, what the trade back situations are right there.
Right.
6 is kind of like a weird spot for a trade back. I don't know. Seems like kind of in the middle. The trade back's usually in the top, or maybe somebody falls a little bit towards the 10th pick. The in between 6th overall. It's interesting to see what kind of players would be there for a trade back. Not sure.
Yeah, and trading back, I think, is the ideal scenario because you don't need you need a lot of quality players, but with this draft where I don't think there's 6 A+ players like there were last year. Like last year, the Titans, not that JC Latham is a bad player. I don't think he's a bad player, but I really think that you had 6 elite blue chip prospects and they all went off in front of you. In terms of, and I would have put Brock Bowers in there. That's who I know Jared said he would have picked him. I think I would have picked him too. But the 3 quarterbacks and then Harrison, Neighbors, Alt. I think those were the 6 blue chip prospects. Latham's a very good player, but I wouldn't have put him in that same category. So if you're at 6 again, this year, I don't know if there are 6 blue chip prospects. I think there's a lot of guys who are just one tier below that. And I'm not sure you're going to get a whole lot of guys a whole lot of teams wanting to trade up, especially when the quarterback class is pretty weak this season. So we'll have to see about that. But I think the biggest factor in the Titans being able to turn this around in one offseason, and again, that's the question I think Amy Adams Strunk has to ask herself is, can the Titans turn this around in one offseason and have Rand Carthon show some progress? Because Rand Carthon can't be a losing GM in 3 straight years and keep his job. I think the quarterback is the biggest thing that needs to turn that around. We'll talk about that next. Jake Lyman in for Jared Stillman today. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063, The Game. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063, The Game. Jake Lyman in for Jared Stillman today. Teron Davenport will join us very shortly as he makes his way over from Titans practice. He'll be with us for the rest of the show. Plenty to get to with TD. Titans, college football, the Heisman race, and we'll do a little Ask TD coming up later in the show. If you have questions for Teron, you can text us 615-737-1025. Already getting some responses on our text line. I'm saying that the question Amy Adams Strunk needs to ask herself heading into this offseason when it comes to whether she fires Rand Carthon and Chad Brinker and that whole crew or not is, does she think the Titans can turn it around in one offseason? WB in Thompson Station says, you must be kidding. Turn it around in one offseason, especially if it's the same people picking these folks. That's exactly what I'm saying, is that I don't think it's likely that this Titans team goes from 4-13 or whatever they're going to be at the end of this year to a playoff contender, given what they have available to them in the offseason. And if you're not a playoff contender next year, then Rand Carthon is, 3 straight under 500 seasons, not showing a ton of progress. He's probably gone anyway. So why not let the new guy come in early and get to use some of these assets to try and start the upward trajectory? Tony on our text line kind of took me where I wanted to go. A competent quarterback could make this team 3 to 4 wins better just like that. And that's where I kind of hesitate to think that the Titans can turn around, because where are they going to find this competent quarterback play? We went through it yesterday with Keizer and Frazier. Your options are pretty much Will Levis, a rookie in a class that is kind of widely regarded as not that great, and a journeyman veteran of like a Daniel Jones, a Justin Fields, or if you really want to pay a long-term deal, you could maybe get Sam Darnold. But that's your options. Will Levis, Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward, or another rookie, or a journeyman veteran to come in here and maybe be a bridge quarterback for you. Are any of those guys going to move the needle all that much at the quarterback position? I don't think so. And I think in order to be a 9-10 win team, yes, you have to solidify the offensive line. Yes, you probably have to add a couple more weapons at wide receiver and tight end. You need more pass rushers. You probably need a safety. You need a lot of things. But most importantly, you need a quarterback who, at worst, isn't going to lose games for you. And I don't know if the Titans are going to be able to find that in this offseason. So why let Rand Carthon make these picks if you're probably going to have to fire him at the end of next year anyway? GMs don't get 4 years of sub 500 seasons to work things out anymore. Maybe back in the day they did, but the NFL has become more of a what have you done for me lately world, and I just don't think that Rand Carthon is going to get a 4th year without putting together at least an 8-win season next year. Like, I could see if they go 4-13 this year, they improve to 8-9 next year, I could see him getting a 4th year. But if they go 7-10, 6-11, I just don't see it. I don't see Amy Adams Strunk signing up for that again with all of the talk she does about, I have high expectations for this team and I want to bring Lombardis to Nashville. I just don't see her sticking with a guy with 3 straight losing seasons. And I don't really see how the Titans make this a winning team over the next 8 months before next season with the resources that they have.
It's hard to see Levis making a huge leap.
Right.
In order to get there. But I don't know. I mean, I guess it's possible. Year 2 in the new system with Callahan.
And, there are those outside factors that could possibly come in. Like, what if the Titans do end up with the number 1 overall pick? They trade back for a haul, and instead of bringing in 2 top 40 picks, maybe you're bringing in 4 top 50 guys. And that could make a big difference. If Will Levis does take a big step forward. Those are a lot of big ifs. And I don't know if you can, again, hitch your wagon to Rand Carthon based on those ifs of, hey, maybe we get somebody to give us a king's ransom for our 1st round pick, or maybe Will Levis goes from bottom 3rd of the NFL quarterback to top 15 quarterback in the NFL. I just don't see it. Could I see Rand coming back? Sure, but I think that would be Amy saying that she thinks that he can turn this around in one offseason, because if he doesn't, he's going to get fired. So I don't know. I at this point, I think changes have to be made when over the last 2+ years since you were 7-3 after that Green Bay game. You're what now? 6-18, 9-29, 9-28 over the last 2+ years. Like something's got to change. I don't think the status quo is going to sit well with fans. It already isn't sitting well with fans. So I don't think you can just say, "Hey, let's run it back for another year," after going 4-13 or whatever, not seeing much progress from your quarterback, not seeing much progress from your offensive line, despite having a guru offensive line coach, spending all this money in free agency. I think you got to change something, and it does feel like the GM is going to be the guy who ends up being the fall guy for this team. Could I see her running it back with the full staff? Yes. I don't think that would go over very well with the fans, though. Um, it wouldn't be the full staff. We'd see some coaching changes for sure.
Surely the special teams would be
Yes, Colt Anderson would
a
likely
little
be gone.
changeover there.
I'm sure we'd see some position changes get flipped over, and maybe we see a bunch of scouts get changed, or I don't know what it is. But if they head into this year with Rand Carthon and this crew still there, they better knock this draft out of the park. Like the Jets 2 years ago. And I know it hasn't worked out for the Jets, but like when they had the offensive and defensive rookie of the years in the same season, that's got to be the type of draft that Rand Carthon would have to keep his job moving forward if this team doesn't take a huge step forward. Other textures on our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. One texter says he wants Kyle McCord on the Titans if he's available late. I honestly don't hate that. I mean, super talented guy. He's shown flashes at Ohio State and Syracuse. He throws a lot of interceptions. But yeah, if he's there in the 6th or 7th round, that's a dude he was a 4 or 5-star quarterback. Wes in Clarksville says, how do we know Levis is not a good quarterback? We don't. We don't know that he's not a good quarterback. And that's the issue, is you don't want to get stuck in this middle ground where you kind of just hold on to him until it's too late. And you're like, all right, well, we got to either sign him or we got to find somebody else. So
I do wonder if they tried to put a little bit too much on his plate early on, the first half of the season there, and he was just swimming. New system, new stuff. It was obviously too much for him to handle.
I think the expectations led to that too. I think he went into the year knowing that Nashville was kind of looking at him to be the savior, and I think maybe he tried to be the hero, and that ended up. We saw the plays early in the year.
That backfired for sure.
Right, and since he's come back, it does seem like he's made the adjustments. He's taking care of the ball 1,000 times more than he did earlier in the year. But taking care of the ball is only so much of the equation. You got to make enough plays to put your team in a position to win. And outside of the Texans game, where he threw a pick 6 late in that one that almost lost the game for him, there really haven't been a whole lot of times where he's made winning plays for this football team.
Yeah, he's still missing some of the routine ones too.
Right. And even some of these great throws, like the second touchdown to Calvin Ridley in the Chargers game about a month ago, great ball, over the shoulder, touchdown pass, but it was in garbage time. Like, it's not that if he makes that throw with 45 seconds left in the game down by 4 to put the Titans on top, it's a different story. But it was at a point where the Chargers were kind of just playing prevent and they were up 2 scores and there was less than a minute left. It's like, who cares if they add another touchdown to it? So we don't really know about Will Levis, and I just don't know if he's going to elevate his game enough to turn this team around in 1 year. And again, at that point, what's the point of keeping the GM in place if he's probably going to be gone after another year? 615-737-1025 is our phone number. If you want to chime in, you can text or call. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Teron Davenport is here. TD will join us for the rest of the show coming up next. Jake Lyman in for Jared Stillman today. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063, The Game. Jake Lyman in for Jared Stillman today. Jared out the rest of the week. It'll be me and Teron Davenport for the rest of the week from 2 to 6. Going to be a lot of fun. Usually Jake and TD only from 6 to 7 on Fridays. So he'll be with us until 6 o'clock today, 2 to 6 tomorrow, and we'll talk plenty of Titans and much more. TD, glad to have you here. Talking some Titans here, but first, I know you're getting ready for Juan Soto to be a New York Met officially. I guess they just introduced him. Big week for you.
Yeah, no, it's a huge week. They introduced him. Now watching him and he and Steve Gelb's talk on SNY. It's funny, man. It's exciting, and it's interesting to be on the fan side of this. I got my Mets coffee cup here.
There you go.
My Mets season tickets. Yeah, man. Jeff Passan, Anthony DeComo, these are guys that I'm just following constantly on Twitter. So it's pretty cool to be on this side of it and see what it's like, man. It's been a while since, I've been this excited about my Mets, and I've stayed through them throughout the whole time, stay with them rather. But yeah, it's hype now.
I know you came in pretty much right after the World Series. We were recording Jake and TD, and you were like, I'm starting to get ready for this Soto stuff. Like he's got to come. He's got to come to Citi Field, and there you go. They got it done. $765 million. He will be playing with the Mets until almost 2040. So
just about, yeah.
Big signing for the Mets. Now got Frankie Lindor and Juan Soto at the top of that order. So it should be fun out there. And yeah, you mentioned you got the season tickets now, so you can head up there and get to see those guys.
Yeah, I got a 20-game Packers, not a full season.
Yeah. I mean, 162 is tough. Yeah, especially when you don't live in New York.
Right.
But still, you got opportunities to head up there and see those guys.
Absolutely.
So cool to see that earlier this week as the hot stove heats up in the MLB. Lots of Titans talk today as well, and we'll also get into some of the college football playoff and kind of tie that into the Titans with some of the players that are still playing for a national championship who maybe could be targets for the Titans in this year's draft. But first, TD, we were talking a little bit about, the big question is, what changes will Amy Adams Strunk make at the end of the season? And I know there's been a lot of talk about that today and throughout the last couple of weeks. Do you think that if she is going to stick with this group, that they really have to show progress next year and put themselves into a playoff contending spot in order to really make it a long-term thing instead of just, hey, let's give them another year, and if not, we're going to let them go at the end of that one?
Yeah, I think really the main thing is there has to be some sort of change just because of the lack of success that they found. Now, I firmly believe that Brian Callahan should remain the head coach.
Agreed.
And, Nick Suss, he wrote a really good story about the faith that a lot of these guys have. I suggest reading that on the Tennessee. And if you don't have a subscription, it's not expensive. Go ahead.
It's like $1, I think.
Yeah, go ahead and get it. And with that, you'll also be able to read Gentry Estes, his
the
really
open
good
letter
column as well. But what Nick's story talked about is something that, I've also found in talking to these players. They have faith in Brian Callahan and what he's building. And then in addition to that, like I just talked to Cheeto Awuzie. I talked to him today, and he talked about the calmness and the optimism and how that kind of radiates from him, and they pick it up. And they're like, okay, no matter what, even if it's bad, like we feel like there's something building. Then also he said that there's a degree of, because of how he is, they don't want to disappoint him. And that's true. And it's almost like I liken it to how Rob Moore was with the receivers, where they would tell me that it was like, man, I hate it if I ran the wrong route, if I dropped the ball. Because it was like, man, I felt like I was disappointing my uncle. You know what I mean? Like it's that love and respect type of relationship. And it's strange because, in those cases, a lot of the demographics were the same. But Brian Callahan obviously is a different background from Chidobe Awuzie or from Jeffrey Simmons or whoever. But that's the mindset. It's like, hey, I want to make sure I want to make Coach proud, And I think when you say all that, that's why I think Callahan should be back. I think Denard Wilson should be back. I think Nick Holtz should be back. Cole Anderson, that's probably one that you can move on from. But I will say this. the last couple weeks, like I've noticed the special teams start to come into place, and I've noticed him actually in how he talks, and even watching him interact with the play. It's coming along. So there does have to be some changes, but I just don't know exactly what changes that are going to be made.
Right. And we've got about a month to figure that out. But I think you're right about Brian Callahan, and I think he deserves another year. It has to be pretty much a disaster to be a one-year head coach in the NFL.
Yeah.
And I think that deals with less of the results on the field and more of the culture that you're building in the locker room.
There it is.
Like 2014 gets brought up a lot, and we actually compared the 2014 roster to this current roster. But I remember at the end of 2014, there were stories about Bernard Pollard like starting fights in the locker room and stuff like that towards the end of that season. It's like there's none of that going on this year.
Yeah, and I don't think they have a Bernard Pollard either. Like
No.
that is a different dude. I say it that way, but yeah, I mean, to your point, the culture and just like the total chaos is not there. And even the things that you may point to is like Jeffrey Simmons with his quotes about, hey, I'm tired of the quarterback getting his block knocked off. That's not a personal shot at the offense. That's just him backing his quarterback.
Yeah.
And so these are things where I think it's still like it's okay that they're happening.
I think there's a difference between holding guys accountable and taking shots at guys. Like I think Jeffrey Simmons, it might have been a little aggressive of a way of holding those guys accountable, saying in the media like, "Hey, we got to protect the quarterback." But I didn't take that as a personal shot at anybody. And that's when you start having issues. So I agree. I think Callahan and that staff, for the most part, I'm sure there will be some turnover, but I think that staff deserves another year. I think it's the front office that is going to get a hard look for maybe Adam Strunk at the end of this season. Let's head back to our phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Adam in Portland wants to chime in on the offense. Adam, what you got for us?
TD, sorry to hear about your mom, man. I'm glad that you're back and kicking it. So I can't wait. Number one, I cannot wait for Juan Soto to go 0-for-4 against the Braves. Every time they play the Braves, I think we're going to be fine against him. I think he's a joke. But that's also just a bitter Braves fan. Here's the problem I got with everybody on the Titans offense, man, is that Levis, I would be brave enough to say that I think Levis he's gotten better, honestly, dude. And you can see like certain arm angles that he takes when they're bringing pressure. He knows his line sucks. We all know his line sucks. Talking about it is just beating a dead horse. His line is going to suck for the rest of the year. But I feel like he's improved with that line. Like I feel like he's getting the ball out a lot quicker. I feel like the certain throws, like quick hits, he's gotten a lot better at timing some of that. Has he missed throws? Yeah, he's missed a lot of throws. It is what it is, man. Like he's not perfect, but what are you going to do? Are you going to go to Sam Darnold and pay him $40 million and not be able to go get linemen? And you're going to put Sam Darnold behind that line and get him killed, and then he'll look like old Sam Darnold. He won't look good. So I would just say ride with Sam Darnold, man. That's where I'm at. Or I'm sorry, ride with Will Levis and go get him a real line and see if he can play. I don't think we properly assessed him, Jay. And I'll see if TD thinks about that. But I don't think we've gotten a full understanding because we hadn't got to see him run the offense behind a real line.
Yeah, thanks for the call, Adam. Good point. I didn't realize TD didn't have the headphones on, so he missed the first part of that. But
yeah, I heard the Soto dig, but maybe Max Fried will be able to strike him out. Oh, wait a minute. He's not there anymore. Yeah. Anyhow, as far as what Adam said, just in regards to the evaluation, I think it has been a little bit tougher to get a full eval because of that offensive line. He is right there. Jedrick Wills Jr. is a guy I would look at signing. I don't, the injury thing, it definitely would scare me away a little bit, but just the fact that he is a quality guy that could come in and play right tackle. This team just hasn't had good luck with or fortune with guys who were injured before. But I will say this, yes, Levis has improved. But two things can be existent at the same time. He hasn't improved enough.
Correct.
He's improved. These things that he's doing now, these are the things that were supposed to happen week 2, week 3. We're in week 15 now, and I know he was out for 4 weeks or 3, whatever it was, but we're in week 15 now. These mistakes that he was making before are mistakes that just shouldn't happen. And then we can't put it under the table how a wide open player was missed. And so I understand the improvement. I understand the getting the ball out quicker. I understand the not being as careless with the football. I understand the not chasing big plays and allowing them to come. And those big plays coming, you can't miss Chig wide open in the end zone.
On 4th and goal.
This is a completion that changes the game. And we're talking a lot differently right now if that happens. So, yes, the eval is incomplete. Yes, I agree. Go get some pieces and build around him more. By the way, did you see Ted McMillan declared?
Yeah, that
Another option.
I like Ted
you know.
McMillan.
So I think, adding these types of pieces will help.
I think you're right. And me and Ian were kind of talking about that with Will Levis of the improvement is there. It's much better than the first 3 weeks, but he's still not making winning plays. And as a quarterback, that's your number one goal is to put your team in a position to win.
Yeah.
And so far he's only got one win all season. In fact, so we haven't seen enough out of Will Levis yet, but have we seen enough to completely move on? I think that's the question that we're going to have to ask as we head towards the offseason. 615-737-1025 is our phone number if you want to chime in. We've got some people on the lines, people on the text line. We'll get to you guys after the break. Talking Titans here with Teron Davenport, Jake Lyman, in for Jared Stillman today, 1025, 1063 The Game. Joins Jared Stillman, Chris Sanders, and Derek Mason downtown at JBJ's Nashville this Sunday for the pregame show from 9:30 to 11:30 a.m. They'll break down the Titans' Week 15 matchup against the Bengals and give you the latest updates before the game. The pregame show is presented by Parman Tractor and Equipment, Sundeck Nashville, Sloan's Motorcycle ATV, and award-winning Blue Note Juke Joint and Blue Note Crossroads Bourbon. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport filling in for Jared Stillman today and tomorrow. We'll be with you until 6 o'clock. Plenty to get to on the Titans as we preview the Titans and Bengals coming up on Sunday and much more. Let's get to your phones. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. If you want to chime in, let's start with Mike in Gallatin. Wants to talk about Jamar Chase, who the Titans will face on Sunday at Nissan Stadium.
Hey, guys. Thanks for taking my call. So I don't know if either one of you guys had an opportunity to watch the Bengals-Cowboys game on Monday night, but I was invested in it because I had playing against Jamar Chase in a fantasy league that was make or break for me. And I watched the game, and Joe Burrow, it's almost like that he was the only one that was being targeted the entire game. TD, again, if you watch the game, you've known more about it today. Did the Cowboys just decide to not game plan for Jamar Chase at all, period? Because, again, like they threw the ball to him. He caught 14 catches. And then the running backs and the tight ends caught everything else. T. Higgins was the only other receiver, I think, that caught a ball the entire game. It's crazy. I don't know if that's a credit to how bad the Cowboys defense is. Or, again, I'm not going to discredit how great I know Joe Burrow and I know Jamar Chase are elite players. I'm not trying to say that. But are we in for more of the same this Sunday?
Yeah, that's a good point about Chase. Now, Andre Yoshivas, who I really like him, he was a high-level decathlete
out of Princeton,
out
right?
Of Princeton, yeah. In addition to a baller, but he had a catch too. But when you look at Jamar Chase, and the thing that is interesting to me, because I not only watched this game, but like 3 others, they're expanding his use. Like it used to be, they would go 3-by-1, have him backside, isolated, and say, Chase, just go get busy. You know what I mean? But now you're seeing him in the slot as number 2 or the furthest in, and they're working screens to him, they're working slot fades to him. They have combo routes where they divide the safety with the dig and the post over top. You're going to see a lot of that, I believe, this week, is as far as just Chase being moved around, and then I'm finding ways to just get him the football. There was actually the touchdown. It was against the Ravens. He had a 70-yarder, right? He started out, it was 2-by-2, right? And it was empty. It was empty. It was 3-by-2, right? And Chad Brown was the furthest receiver. Then it was Chase. Then it was T. Higgins. They motioned him across the formation. You had the tight end Drew Sample, and I forget the other tight end. Not Gesicki. It was the blocking one.
I know who you're talking about.
Regardless, they were there, and then he motioned, and they just threw a screen to him, and they blocked, and he found a crease, and he took it like 67 yards for a 70-yard touchdown. Those are the things you're going to see. You're going to see a Malcolm X approach to get him the football by any means necessary.
Jamar Chase is he's sneakily having one of the best wide receiver seasons in a very, very long time.
He's leading the league with 93 receptions, 15 touchdowns. I want to say 1,300 and something yards. Like, this dude is killing it.
He has 93 catches, 1,300 yards, 15 touchdowns. All 3 of those are first in the NFL. And there's still 4 games to go. He could realistically put up a 120, 1,700 yard and 20 touchdown season, depending on how he finishes off the year. And the way he's playing right now, he's basically putting up 125, 150 and 2 touchdowns in every single game.
Chasing Cooper Kupp.
I do have to say, I feel bad for Mike that he was facing Jamar Chase. I was also locked in on that one for fantasy purposes. I had Joe Burrow, and that last touchdown won me my game. So it was big for me to get that last touchdown.
I lost by 0.2 of a point.
Oh no,
that's okay.
It's those Monday Night Football ones that come down to the wire are heartbreaking.
Yeah.
I was worried when they punted it back that Burrow wasn't going to get the ball back, and the blocked punt and. Amani Oruwariye stepping up and trying to catch it helped me out.
Terrible.
But Jamar Chase going to be tough to stop. We'll talk a little bit more about him later on in the show. Let's get to Tucker next, who wants to talk about the draft and some of the quarterback competition. Tucker, go ahead.
What's up, guys? Yeah, I just had a couple questions. So let's say we get to the draft, coming up pretty soon, and we got like a Will Campbell caliber tackle on the board, and also McMillan from Arizona on the board as well. Would y'all want to target that wide receiver more? Or do you want to get more of the tackle to protect the quarterback? And just in terms of the quarterback as well, do y'all want to, stick with Rudolph or go to the free agency, get like a Jameis Winston, get a, somebody that we haven't really heard of in a long time, like a Jimmy Garoppolo? I'm not really sure about his availability right now, like his contract, but get somebody like that to just compete. And if Levis just keeps on going downhill with a good offensive line, if we structure that offensive line, should we just go to one of those guys and kind of have that bridge quarterback, so to say, to try and wait for one of these elite guys coming up in a draft? Maybe. I don't know. That could be a loaded question. I'm not giving up on Levis yet. I agree with what was said earlier that he still needs to be evaluated a little bit better. But yeah, what do you guys think about that?
Well, I tell you what, having to choose between the LSU tackle and the Arizona receiver, that would be tough for me. Well, here's the thing. It depends on your strategy, right? Because, okay, do you go out and sign T. Higgins and not worry about getting a Ted McMillan? Or do you go out and you sign Jedrick Wills Jr. and, not worry about getting Will Campbell? Now, I will say this. You're going to hear me say this name a lot. Kyle Kennard.
Yeah, South
Carolina. Watch that game against LSU.
Him and Dylan, the freshman that they've got over there, the pass rusher, who just re-signed a new deal to stay with South Carolina, which that tweet was crazy. But no, Kennard, he was just named the Nagurski Award.
Took him to the car wash. So that's an interesting thing to consider. But look, you're always going to have someone that could do their thing against you. But I think it really depends on what they do free agency wise. You know what I mean? Me personally, I'd probably be more inclined to sign Wills and draft a guy like McMillan and just have Wills play right tackle and re-sign Dylan Raines, and your line, I think, should be in good shape. But picking out of those two, that's what it would depend on. Now, he also asked about
bringing in a quarterback to compete with Levis next year.
I like the Garoppolo idea.
Yeah.
I like that idea. He's going to be a free agent. I think this is one of those destinations that if I'm Jimmy G, I would want to come here because it's like, okay, I know I'm going to be the backup, but we don't know what the situation is with this quarterback. Let's say it doesn't go right or he gets hurt. He's been in the league, 2 years already, got hurt both years. Now I get a shot. I would do that if I was him.
I don't know if it's a fair comparison, but I mentioned yesterday kind of the Kyle Trask, Baker Mayfield camp from the Bucs a few years ago, where it's like, you've got the young guy, you're not sure about him. Let's bring in a reclamation project and let him battle it out in camp and see what happens. I wouldn't mind that. As far as the Dylan Stewart, one of the texters says the pass rusher from South Carolina, the freshman, he'll be a top 5 pick in 2 years.
Oh yeah,
as long as he stays healthy.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of Ted McMillan or a wide receiver versus a tackle, I was talking about it yesterday. The last 2 years, the Titans have picked an offensive lineman and let
deja
guys
vu all over.
They've let guys like Jackson Smith and Jigba and Brock Bowers stay on the board. Make the sexy pick and take Ted McMillan or Luther Burden. Get
ready
the fans
for some
excited.
playmakers.
Yeah,
all
get
right,
some
so
playmakers.
let me ask you, because Rhett Bryan from Titans Radio, he and I, we were talking about it, and he was like, I don't know. And I did the same, like, I don't know either. Who do you want, the Benz or the Beamer?
Yeah.
Ted McMillan or Luther Burden III?
I don't know. It depends on where you look. Like some people have Ted McMillan as like the second best player in the draft. But Luther Burden heading into the year, after that huge year he had with Brady Cook, was much higher rated than he is now.
Yeah.
I think he's kind of slipped down draft boards. I like Luther Burden. I saw him play live at Vandy last year. I would like Luther Burden, but you could convince me on Ted McMillan too.
Mizzou, they face Iowa.
Right. They're going to be in the Music City Bowl.
Yeah, I will be at that game. I like Burden for this reason. The return aspect that he brings. I think you could have him as your slot guy or line him up outside, but you also have all the gadget stuff you could do. And you could have him as a returner too,
which the Titans badly need. We're going to talk more about some of these college guys out there that you can watch in the playoff or in bowl games that the Titans may be taking a look at in April coming up next. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport in for Jared Stillman today. Stillman and Company, 1025-1063 The Game. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063. The Game, hour number 2 on this Thursday. Jake Lyman and Teron Davenport sitting in for Jared Stillman today and tomorrow. We are broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Talking Titans today, and we'll open it up to you coming up at 4:30. A little bit of Ask TD. You can get your questions in on our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. 615-737-1025. Here in this hour, we're going to kind of make the tie between college football and the Titans, because the college football playoff going to have a lot of eyes on it starting next week. 4 games in the first round, then the 4 quarterfinals, so on and so forth, and a lot of talent between these 12 teams that could end up being available to the Titans in the NFL draft in April. And there's some of the big positions out there that the top talent is not going to be playing. They'll be playing in their bowl games, of course, but not a lot of quarterbacks are going to be in it. Shedeur Sanders not in the playoff. Cam Ward not in the playoff. Jalen Milroe not in the playoff. All of those guys just narrowly missed out. You'll have Quinn Ewers and Carson Beck, who I'm sure will hear their name called in April at some point, but probably not in the first round. I want to start with the edge rushers here, TD. We just talked a little bit about Kyle Kennard. He just missed out on it as well. But I think that is the position that the Titans could be looking at high in the draft. If they don't go offensive line or wide receiver, you could pick an edge rusher, and there are more than a couple that are going to be playing in this playoff, including James Pierce just down the road with the Vols, Jalen Walker at Georgia, and
Michael Williams,
and Abdul Carter at Penn State.
Yeah,
I think that's the guy that I would be looking at.
Yeah, I think he's the most dynamic out of all those guys. Pierce is interesting because he was coming in. Everybody's like, hey, top 3, top 5 pick.
Yep.
Maybe not now, but
still probably Carter, top half of the first round.
Yeah, definitely top 15. I think Carter, I just love the juice that he brings off the edge and the way he plays, and he's someone that even though he's not the biggest, he could still defend against the run too. But I mean, the guy is going to get you to get to the quarterback. That's the big thing.
Maybe it's just because he's wearing the 11 at Penn State, but there are times you see a little Micah Parsons out of him. I don't know if it's a perfect comparison, and it may just be because they're wearing the same jersey for the same team. But I think maybe there's a little bit of that in him off the edge.
Yeah, and I think, looking at his size here, 6'3", 259, like if he measures up to that, you weigh that into the juice that he brings off the edge, that speed to power is always going to be an option for somebody like that. So I feel he's someone that definitely is intriguing, but I mean, don't sleep on Walker either. I think when you look at him and what he brings with that Georgia defense, I mean, they're all really good defenders, but he's another one that kind of intrigues me. So it's going to be interesting just seeing like how they fall. And this is a conversation I had with Willie and those guys, because they were like, hey, do you feel this team should tank? And my thing is this: if you are not there to pick Shedeur Sanders or Travis Hunter, what really is the difference between 3 and 10?
Right. Me and Ian were talking about that earlier in the show. Of last year, it felt like those top 6 were where you wanted to be, and the Titans fell just outside of that. J.C. Latham's a good player, but Marvin Harrison, Malik Neighbors, Joe Alt, those 3 quarterbacks, that felt like the blue chip 6, and the Titans just missed out on that. This year, it really feels like it's Hunter and Sanders at the top, and then you've probably got 10 to 12 who you could probably put in the same tier, just a little bit above one another of where they're possibly going to go.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Why I feel the best thing for this team to do is to try to win out, build that winning culture, establish momentum. I actually was talking to Ridley about that today, and he was like, there's a lot of young guys that have to learn how to win. And, I fully believe in building momentum and rolling that into the next year. I mean, that's what I'm looking to do, and then he was asked about the 1,000 yards, and he was like, that's an example. Like, everybody as a receiver, you want to get 1,000 yards, so you could build momentum into the future, but at the same time, still be in a position to get a good player. Because, I mean, you look, it's pretty deep at edge rusher. Now, from Abdul Carter down to I don't know, the 10th rate, whoever that may be, obviously is different. But I think if you're in that top 10, top 12 range, you're going to get your hands on a really good pass rusher.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the top 12 in this draft, I think you can look and see there are 2 tackles that are solid with Campbell and Banks.
Mhm.
Banks got hurt at Texas. I don't think it looks like it's too serious, but those 2 on the offensive line, I think, are top 12 picks. You got 4 edge rushers that probably could fit in there. Maybe more, maybe less. 2 quarterbacks, 3 wide receivers if you count Travis Hunter as a wide receiver. So there are options no matter where you fall. And even though the Titans are kind of in this mess of teams with 2, 3, 4 losses, even if you won out and were 7-10, the fall wouldn't be too far beyond 10, 11, 12.
Right. And that's what I'm saying. And even, let's say you go, 15 to 20. I mean, now you're looking at a Kyle Kennard, a guy that could be an impact player. So there's going to be options.
Right. You look at the draft order right now, there are 8 teams with 2 and 3 losses. So you've got a quarter of the NFL is 3-10 or 2-11, but then you go 5 spots beyond that, and Miami's 6-7. So it would be pretty hard, even if the Titans won out, to fall further than 12.
Hey, listen, that's a good thing for them,
right? You can kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone of build that culture, build that winning culture, but also you don't lose a top level pick. And again, like we said, I don't think there's 6 blue chip guys. I think it's 2 blue chip guys, and then you've got 10, and it's like pick your poison. What fits your team best? And the Titans should still be able to get a good player. We're going to talk a little bit more about this coming up next. There's some wide receivers, even though the top guys at wide receiver aren't playing in the playoff. A couple of guys that maybe the Titans could look at in the second round. We'll talk about that next, and also get back to your phones. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport, in for Jared Stillman today. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Nashville's best deal this week is 312 Pizza Company in Germantown. 312 Pizza Company serves the best pizza in town, as well as Chicago-style eats like Chicago dogs, Italian beef sandwiches, and more. Check them out at 371 Monroe Street in Germantown, or order takeout online at 312pizzacompany.com. Head to theGameNashville.com/deals now to get half off a $30 gift card to 312 Pizza Company while supplies last. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport in for Jared Stillman today. Stillman and Company here on 102.5 and 106.3 The Game. Again, we're going to do a little Ask TD, get some questions for Teron Davenport about the Titans, Juan Soto, anything else. Be sure to give your questions in the text line, 615-737-1025. Again, we'll get to those in a little over an hour. We're talking about some guys that you could be watching in the college football playoff that maybe are in the two-tone blue next year. And we talked about edge rusher. That is a position with a lot of top picks who are in the playoff. The wide receiver position, TD, we're not going to see Travis Hunter in the playoff, although he is playing in kind of a weird bowl game, playing against a conference opponent in BYU in their bowl game. We'll also see Tet McMillan. No, actually, I don't know if they're bowl eligible, Arizona.
I don't think they are.
I don't think they are either. Luther Burden will be in the Music City Bowl.
Yeah, they'll be right here.
And we are going to talk to Scott Ramsey from the Music City Bowl coming up towards the tail end of the show. But a couple of guys that are in the playoff that maybe could be second round options, or maybe if the Titans trade back. One of them that stands out to me, and maybe it's just because I love the Ohio State wide receivers and what they've been turning out. Emeka Egbuka, he stuck around. He could have gone out to the draft last year, probably would have been second round pick last year. But he's been playing in that group with, Jackson Smith and Jigba and others over the last few years. I think he could be a guy who is experienced and, of course, talented, that maybe that's a second round pick if the Titans do elect to go to the pass rush or maybe back to the offensive line in the first round.
Yeah, no, he's a guy that I could see. His routes are good. He's a consistent player. He doesn't have that explosiveness that will push him into the first round. For me, I like him as a player. But if I don't get a receiver, outside of Tet McMillan, Luther Burden, Kyron Lacy is interesting.
Yeah.
Isaiah Bond. I don't know if I force it in round 2, honestly, because I think you may be able to come back a little bit later and get some of these guys. And obviously, during the break, I told you, Tez Johnson and Jimmy Horn are two. I know they're not big players, but they're players that you could package and find something for. So I would probably go more that direction than Egbuka, honestly.
Okay, so if you don't get one of the kind of top tier, kind of a steep drop off from there, so maybe it's a situation where wide receiver is the one you address early, and then you can go back for your pass rusher or tackle. And again, all of this depends on what you do in free agency, of course, too.
Yeah, it does depend on that, And I like Bond, but there were games where he kind of disappeared.
Yeah. And we've seen that at Alabama and at Texas. He wasn't a huge factor in that game against Georgia last week in the SEC championship. Right. We saw more from I'm blanking on their
number 0.
Yeah, their other wide receiver.
Yeah,
we're struggling with names today, but
well, see, that's what a lot of times I remember by numbers. You know what I mean?
Right.
But yeah, he had a really good game.
The name is on the tip of my tongue. If I can remember it, I don't think I'm going to. But yeah, Isaiah Bond, if I'm not mistaken, he's the one who caught the Matthew Golden had a big game. That was who it was. And DeAndre Moore for Texas.
Moore was the one.
But yes, the Isaiah Bond, he's the one who caught the Iron Bowl miracle 4th and 26 or whatever it was last year for Alabama, and then obviously transferred to Texas. So maybe that's a guy that the Titans draft later on, but I just don't I don't know. Like you said, if you miss out on McMillan, Burden, and some of those other guys towards the top, maybe you elect to use that pick somewhere else. There is a texter, and we'll get to more of these questions later on in Ask TD, but somebody wanted to know, when would the Titans get a right tackle in the draft? Because we were kind of looking at the free agent tackle options, and Jedrick Wills was one that you mentioned, but outside of that, there's not a ton of great options for the Titans in free agency to get a starting quality right tackle.
Well, a lot of times what happens is as you get closer, like especially like in the Senior Bowl time and those things, that's when guys start to emerge. Like I remember last year, mid season, I kept saying, "Man, Roger Rosengarten, this guy,
Yep.
watch him,
Out of Washington.
Yeah, I'm like the quarter panics is left-handed, so he's in essence the blind side protector.
That's a good point.
He's a right watch, and he's doing well in Baltimore. So somebody will emerge. I think LSU, they're not Campbell, but the other guy, he just declared the guy on the opposite side. And that line actually isn't bad because you got Miles Frazier, the guard.
Emory
also,
Jones.
Emory Jones. Yeah, he just declared. So, or he's coming out. So that's one I'm trying to remember the guys that the Senior Bowl named recently, but that's really when you really see these guys start to emerge because you're like, wow, I didn't realize that his footwork was that good. I didn't realize, wow, he really is that size that he's listed and those things. That's why I love the Senior Bowl events. But this year, it's like, okay, Senior Bowl or Shrine, like
Right.
the Shrine has caught up and but my loyalty has traditionally been to the Senior Bowl, so I'll be there. But Shrine is going to be an interesting experience too.
I think this guy's going to be at the Senior Bowl too. He's a guy who I've seen mocked as maybe a second-round option at tackle. He plays left tackle for Minnesota. Is it Ariante Ursary? I want to say is the pronunciation on that.
I can't pronounce it.
But he's another guy who's up there. He's actually going to play my Hokies in the Duke's Mayo Bowl later on this year. So I'll have to give a look.
Eye on him.
I mean, the Hokies have had like half their team transfer out, so I'm not sure he'll get much of a test, but maybe that's a guy to look at as well. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Let's go back to the phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. John wants to chime in talking about Will Levis and this Titans offensive line. John, go ahead.
Hey, how's it going? I'm enjoying the show today.
Thank you, man.
Appreciate it, John.
Yeah. So anyway, so what I'm seeing, and of course I'm not a professional here, what I'm seeing when I watch the games, and sometimes I analyze the tape afterwards. The tape doesn't lie, the video doesn't lie. So I'm seeing a really disjointed offensive line, and it seems like it's all accumulative. It just adds up over the game. It just keeps getting worse. And then we get in these situations where we need a playmaker, and people run out of bounds. They don't catch the ball for a touchdown. Now, okay, Will Levis missed a play on a Okonkwo, but that's just one play. I've seen plays over weeks where people drop passes, run bad routes, offensive line starts collapsing in the second half, and it just gets worse and worse as we go on. So I just think we need a playmaker and an offensive lineman, and that's just how I feel about it, and just give you guys something to think about here.
John, that's a great point. And here's the thing that we get so caught up in is you always want, and it's an elementary way of thinking, right? You say, okay, this is the reason, where it can't be, these are the reasons. And what John just did is present multiple reasons. Yes, Chig Okonkwo was wide open. Levis missed him. Correct. That contributed to the loss. However, Jarrian Jones, who I really liked out of Florida State as a nickelback, broke up a pass against Ridley on a slant. He came back and he ran right by Nicholas Petit-Frere, right by him and sacked him. You know who's coming wide open in the middle of the field? Calvin Ridley. I don't know if he'd have taken it the distance, but it'd have been a big game. That was another reason why they lost. And then you could add these things up. There's so many different plays. Calvin Ridley, the momentum took him out of bounds, or
right.
the lack of spatial awareness allowed him to gather his feet and turn upfield. These are all contributors to losing, right? The lack of pressure. They have a simulated pressure. Backside, you got Arden Key dropping. They don't get home. Mac Jones, yes, I said Mac Jones, eludes the pressure, scrambles to his left, gets Arden Key to commit. Brian Thomas turns his route upfield, boom, big play. Guess what happens a couple plays later? Dow Baker Jr. gets stiff arm to the ground, Tank Bigsby touchdown. There's your ball game.
Yep.
So to his point, it's a collection of things.
I think that it's a very good point from John that the Titans just can't seem to get everything going right at the same time. Calvin Ridley runs a great route. He's wide open. Oh, well, PT got beat on the
Mhm.
backside, and Will Levis got sacked. Offensive line blocks. Will Levis misses the throw, or Will Levis makes the play to Calvin Ridley. He runs out of bounds. It's just nobody is working in sync together to make the plays necessary.
And when you don't have those erasers, aka big time playmakers, everything has to be perfect.
Yep.
Right now, Patrick Mahomes, he probably eludes that. You know what I mean, and somehow manages to throw the ball down the field, and you're like, "Who's he throwing it to?" And also, you see Xavier Worth, or you have Jamar Chase is running towards the boundary, and he turns it upfield and gets the first down. You know what I mean? Those are the things. Or you have Trent Williams, Lane Johnson. Let's use the right tackle, Lane Johnson. The nickel's coming. Lane Johnson grabs him and puts him under the turf. These are difference makers that this team, they don't have enough of those, if any at all.
And you're picking high enough in the draft this year. We just went through it. Even if the Titans win out, likely that they are still picking 12th or higher. They've got to find one of those guys.
Yeah.
Wherever it may be, I would lean towards a playmaker who scores touchdowns on the offensive side of the ball. I mean, Brian Callahan said it to Jared when he got hired, that he always leans towards the guys who score the touchdowns. I'd love to see one of those top guys in two-tone blue next year. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. If you want to continue to chime in, you can text or call our phone lines, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. When we come back, we've been talking about college football a little bit. I want to get TD's thoughts on the Heisman race, which will be decided this weekend in New York City. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport in for Jared Stillman today. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3, The Game.
Hey.
Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport, hanging out in for Jared Stillman today. Been a fun show so far. And again, we're about an hour away from getting some questions in for TD. If you've got anything you want to know from Teron Davenport, send us a text, 615-737-1025. Our phone line's driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. I mentioned heading into the break. I think the Heisman race is one of the most polarizing debates we have in sports right now. And we have a texter, Chase from White Bluff, does say that the betting odds for Travis Hunter are heavy favorite. He minus 1,000 or something like that. So it is most likely going to be Travis Hunter. But I think there is an argument to be made for Travis Hunter and Ashton Genty. The other finalists, Dylan Gabriel and Cam Ward, probably the two best quarterbacks across the country this year. Where do you stand on this, TD? Is it Travis Hunter? Okay, you're in on the Iron Man.
Here's the thing, and I love what Ashton Genty is doing, but what we're seeing from Travis Hunter and Dylan Gabriel, he has Oregon's offense humming. Cam Ward, I said it after the VTech game. I'm like, hey, give him the trophy. Nah, I take that back. Hunter. I just wish it's hard to explain. Like, I don't even know myself what it takes to play 70 to 90 snaps a game.
It's ridiculous.
Like, I remember playing, and this is at a much lower level. I remember playing 40 to 50, and it's like, good Lord. You know what I mean? And not only playing 40 to 50 or him playing 70 to 90, but as a receiver and cornerback, look, when you play corner or receiver, you have to have a degree of deer in you. Like, you got to be able to run like a deer, because there are times you're going to run go routes, and guess what? If you're not running the go route as a corner, you're the guy covering the go route. Now, as a corner, you can't be like, hey. Now, as a receiver, you can be like, hey, let me get one. You know what I mean? After you run a go route. But as a corner, you can't. And then to excel and be a starter on both sides and be one of the premier players, to be a legit top 5 pick at either, get that man a trophy, man. Like, I don't even know what we're talking about this for, honestly. And no disrespect to the other guys.
Ashton Genty, I think, has an argument for it. And in most years, I think he would win it. He's likely going to break Barry Sanders' record as long as he has a game somewhat close to what he's been doing all year long in their first college football playoff game. But I can see it both ways. I really don't have a strong opinion on this one way or the other. I would lean Ashton Genty, but I see why it would be Travis Hunter, and because he is doing something that we really haven't seen before. We
haven't seen that.
And the big argument that a lot of the Genty supporters will say is, well, look, his team's in the playoff and Travis Hunter's not. My argument to that would be, if you swap teams, I think Travis Hunter still takes Boise State to the playoff, and I still think Colorado with Ashton Genty still misses the playoff.
Yeah. I mean, look, this is my thing. I just feel, and you know what I love about Genty? Man, that dude gets to rock like 35 times a game. And the opposing offense, the whole university is like, hey, we're going to stop him. And they don't. You know what I mean? So you got to give him his respect. What Hunter is doing, it's unprecedented.
Yeah.
I mean, you could say Charles Woodson is close to it. And guess what Charles Woodson did? Won the Heisman. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I don't see how you don't give it to this man. It's just, it's tough. And I know I'm looking in the chat, you got some Ashton Genty supporters. I see Jason Watts. What's up, Jason? Speaking on the Travis Hunter, and he said, he's heard 100 to 120 snaps, and there are times where he's playing,
right,
all of the snaps on offense, all of the snaps. The dude is like a cyborg,
and he's playing top-level cornerback and top-level wide receiver. It's not like he's average at both. I wouldn't say he's the best cornerback in the country and the best wide receiver in the country at the same time, but he's playing pretty elite level football on
the
both
best.
sides.
And don't get it twisted. Like there's been some games where he got cooked. Like, we're not going to act like that didn't happen.
No,
but
he has not been perfect.
To be out there and competing, like, I know his fiance may have said that, he's not her type initially. But for me in the Heisman, he's my type. You know what I mean? I'll take him initially, and he's gotten a chance to win me over. Yeah.
I do think it's going to be Hunter on Saturday. And it is crazy to think Deion Sanders has turned that Colorado program in 2 years. They might have the top 2 picks in the draft this year.
Unbelievable.
And we're going to talk about that a little bit in the next segment, but I want to get your thoughts. Where do you think Travis Hunter fits in the NFL? Because at the NFL level, he's not going to be able to play 100 snaps a game.
It's very unlikely.
I think there are ways to have him play both sides and work him in, but do you think he is primarily a wide receiver or primarily a cornerback?
It's a good question. I would probably say primarily a corner. And go back to the 95 season before your time. Watch the Cowboys with Deion, how they used him in offense. But he played 10 to 15 snaps a game. Like, I think that type of role, I envision him more. I think his attributes, are more fitting of a corner. And I think receiver, you could have an impact by, 10 to 15 snaps a game.
And I think it's harder to work a guy in on defense than work a guy in on offense, because it's hard to ask Travis Hunter, like, hey, I know you've been playing offense all day, playing 60 snaps over there at wide receiver, but hey, go guard their number 1 guy for the next 3 snaps to try and get us off the field. Like, that's hard to jump in and get into the rhythm of the game.
Just, hey, go out there and do it. Yeah.
I think you can do it better if he plays the full game as a cornerback and it's like, hey, we need a big play. Go out there, try and make a play on offense. I think that fits a little bit better. We saw it a little bit here with Adoree Jackson on a much smaller level of, hey, let's throw him in there for a play or 2 here and there and see what he can do.
Yeah.
I think it is going to be Hunter on Saturday. Genty, in most years, would win it. But I am glad that it is it's not a quarterback award this year. First time since 2020. Devontae Smith won it back then. And that was in the COVID year
Slim Reaper.
I mean, honestly, if it was a full season, I think they would have found a way to give it to a quarterback. But Devontae Smith did win that one. Some texters thinking about this. One texter says Colorado doesn't play anyone. I mean, we just saw Arizona State and what they've been able to do. They've had a lot of ranked teams. I agree. There's not top level teams like in the SEC, but there are a lot of solid teams in the Big 12.
Yeah. I mean, look, Boise, what they had, their one loss was to Oregon, right?
Yes. Boise State's one loss was to Oregon. Yes. They lost like 31-28.
I mean, it's not like there's a huge separation of competition between who Colorado's facing and Boise's facing.
Yeah. It's
I'm not gonna go with that one.
Yeah, I don't know if the Mountain West and the Big 12 are super separated. Chase and White Bluff bringing up Dylan Sampson. And I don't think he should have been in the Heisman race. But I think, God, what's the award for the best running back? The Doak Walker. He should have been in the finalist for that. That was, I think Amari and Hampton from North Carolina was in there, and Dylan Sampson had a better year than him. He should have been in there. But Chase from White Bluff says, give Dylan Sampson a Mountain West schedule and see what he does. Give Ashton Genty Tennessee's offensive line and see what he does. I think it can go both ways.
Yeah, I don't really get into the put him in. I don't really get into that.
Right, it's all hypothetical.
Genty over close to 7 yards a carry.
Right, and he put up 200 yards against Oregon.
You see what I'm saying? And we're talking about 30 plus carries, and he's close to set. That's Derrick Henry type stuff. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You got to factor that guy in. I'm sorry. He's right where he deserves.
Did he announce he's coming back? Genty?
I haven't seen anything.
I thought I heard that somewhere.
Haven't been looking either.
I don't see any. No, Ashton Genty confirms departure from Boise State after this year. So he will be in the draft this year.
Gotcha.
And I would guess somebody in the first round is going to take a chance on that guy with what he's been able to do this year. So going to be fun on Saturday. We'll keep talking about this a little bit on the other side. We'll also get to your phones. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport in for Jared Stillman today. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Wrapping up hour number 2 here on Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Jake Lyman and Teron Davenport with you up until 6 o'clock today. We'll also be back from 2 to 6 tomorrow as Jared Stillman is out the rest of the week. Talking some Heisman here. And if you want to get your thoughts in, you can text or call 615-737-1025. Again, we'll also do some questions for TD coming up at 4:30. If you want to get those in, send those to our text line. Once again, 615-737-1025. TD, we were talking a little bit about Travis Hunter. It looks like he is going to be the Heisman winner on Saturday. Likely will be, I would think, a top 2 pick in the NFL draft in April. I had this question for Nick Keiser and Nick Frazier yesterday, and I wanted to see your thoughts on it. Let's say the Titans fall apart down the stretch here, lose all 4 games. They get a couple of wins from Las Vegas and New York, and some other teams win. Tennessee ends up with the number 1 overall pick. They don't want to trade down. Do you go next year with Will Levis and Travis Hunter, or do you draft Shedeur Sanders if you have the number 1 pick?
The Titans?
Yeah. I think trading down would be the ideal scenario there. But let's say you can't find a partner that's willing to give you what you think it's worth. You go Hunter or you go Sanders top of the draft?
I mean, I go Sanders and look to deal Levis for something. Like that's, I'll go like Arizona did. You know what I mean?
With Josh Rosen.
And I mean, I would 4th rounder, maybe 3rd.
What did they get? They got a 3rd for Rosen, maybe a 2nd. That was the draft was here that year.
Yeah, I think it was a 3rd for Rosen. But I mean, look, like
he got traded to the
if you got the number 1
second round picks, 62 overall.
Wow, so a top 65 pick and a 5th rounder for Josh Rosen. But Josh Rosen was also a year removed from being a top 10 pick. Will Levis is 2 years removed from being a 2nd round pick. So you're not going to get that much.
Yeah, I would say a 4th, maybe a 3rd, you get, but still that's, hey, if you would get a 3rd, now you're recouping, you know what I mean? And you want a 3rd this year. So what you want to do, and you turn around with the 33rd pick and you'll have options of, good receivers, good edge, maybe a tackle. Like I think that
you think Sanders would be the pick there.
If you can't trade down, I think Sanders, and then you just look to deal Levis.
I would tend to agree with you because you don't get the 1st overall pick all that often.
Bingo.
And if you're not going to get a king's ransom, you take the quarterback, because who knows if you're ever going to get that chance again. I mean, there are plenty of franchises out there who have never had the number 1 overall pick. So you look at it, it's very unlikely. There is such a just a log jam between 1 and 8. Vegas and New York currently have the driver's seat for a top 2 pick because they're 2 and 11. But New England, Carolina, Jacksonville, Tennessee, Jets, Cleveland, all are 3 and 10. So would be tough. But I think if you're up there, trading down would be ideal.
Trading down.
I mean, we saw one of the largest reasons the Titans were able to turn it around so quickly between 2015 and 2016, 17, 18, so on and so forth, was because of that Rams trade.
Mm-hmm.
They had 3 second-round picks in 2016 and 2 first-round picks in 2017. And even...
I mean, that yielded Derrick Henry, Jonnu Smith, Austin Johnson.
Right, Corey Davis.
So, yeah, I mean, it's a lot to build.
Right, that's what you would look to do. But I think you are right. If you have the 1st overall pick and you're going to pick a player, and there's a quarterback there that you think is worthy, you got to do it.
I think Shedeur Sanders is worthy. Absolutely worthy.
But Travis Hunter... tough to pass up on, though.
It's tough to pass up on, but think about it. Like if you take a receiver, if you take a cornerback with the number 1 overall pick, like that dude he's got
to be the greatest corner.
Calvin Johnson. You understand what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
It's just the way it goes, man.
Right. The positional value at quarterback versus cornerback wide receiver, just you've got to be a generational player, which he might be, but you've got to be the generational player if you're going to be taking over the quarterback. Jared from Spring Hill is on board as well, saying he'd take Shedeur, call Dion, and give him the keys to the Titans organization. Maybe that's the only way to get Shedeur here, because that's another factor in this. If the Titans did have the top pick, you'd have to convince Dion to let either Shedeur or Travis come and play for the Titans, because he said he's not going to publicly, like the Mannings did, go out and say, Shedeur won't play for the Titans. He wouldn't do that, but behind the scenes he would say, "Hey, don't pick him. He's not coming."
Yeah. Hey, listen, it's going to have to be known then. You know what I mean? Like it has to come out. If it's
it'll
on
get
some
leaked
don't
for
pick him,
sure.
he's doesn't want to play. Well, the Titans will need to put that out there so teams will know, hey, look, trade up for him.
But would the Titans want to put that out there? Because you lose some leverage there, knowing that you can't take Shedeur Sanders.
You lose some leverage, but it has to be known that pick is like that.
Right.
That pick,
the pick is
you're for sale,
open for business.
You're open for business. Yeah.
A lot to get to before we get to draft season, but I think with the Heisman ceremony coming up, and obviously Travis Hunter in that conversation to be towards the top of the draft, I think it's a fun idea to think of. Hey, maybe two of these Colorado Buffaloes could go 1 and 2 in the draft, and
how about it?
Who knows? Maybe the Titans could be up there. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. We're getting some good thoughts on the text line. Another texter, I guess when I said if the Titans fall apart and go 0-4 down the stretch, he says, "What do you mean if the Titans fall apart? They haven't been together all year."
Fall further apart. There you go.
If they completely hit rock bottom and go 3-14 this year, which probably is the only way they'd have a shot at the top pick, is more of what I meant. But yes, it's a good point. 3-10 definitely isn't having everything together. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport in for Jared Stillman today. Been a fun show. We still got 2 hours to go. When we come back, we're going to get more into the Titans and Bengals on Sunday as Brian Callahan faces his former team. Tyler Boyd and Chidobe Awuzie also facing their former team. We'll preview that game next. Be sure to tune into the Chase and Big Joe show tomorrow from 9 to 11 for your chance to qualify to win a pair of tickets in the all-inclusive Eurostone Club at Bridgestone Arena to see Brett Eldridge live on Friday, December 20th. The Brett Eldridge ticket contest is supplied by Green Trees, a family-owned cannabis company. Check them out online at greentreeswithazcompany.com. We'll take a break. Be right back after this, talking more Titans. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport here on 102.5 and 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063, The Game. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport in for Jared Stillman today and tomorrow. With you till 6 today, 2 to 6 tomorrow. Been fun so far. Lots of Titans talk. Lots of college football talk as we get ready for the playoff and the Heisman ceremony coming up this weekend. We'll get back into the Titans here as they prepare to take on the Bengals. We are broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. And also a reminder to get your texts in, your questions for TD. We'll get to those coming up at 4:30. Our phone number is 615-737-1025. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. TD teased it heading into the break that this is a game on Sunday with a lot of personal ties. Brian Callahan facing his former team, the coach that he coached under for 4 or 5 seasons in Cincinnati. And then, of course, Tyler Boyd and Chidobe Awuzie, who spent a lot of time in Cincinnati. This feels like one that the Titans could take personally, kind of like the Texans game where, Amy Adams-Strunk said she had tears in her eyes, or it was said that she had tears in her eyes talking to the team after the game. Feels like this is one that Callie and those guys are really going to want, facing a team that obviously they're very familiar with.
Yeah, either they're really good at downplaying it or they truly don't feel it's another game. Because I talked to Cheeto a bit today. He said, it's one of those games where it's kind of like you take your brother on the court and you want to beat his butt and show him who's the big brother and who's the little brother. But he say, of course he wants to beat them, but it's nothing personal. And he doesn't have any hard feelings. He still has a lot of homies on the team. And this is a guy who, they didn't re-sign. You know what I mean? For Brian Callahan, he said, no animosity, ill will, or anything like that. He learned lessons there. And he told me the lesson that the biggest one was the patience and staying the course and keeping the eyes on the prize, even though the first 2 years were terrible. So I think it's a game where, they want to win. But when I'm gathered, I haven't really talked to Tyler Boyd too much this week or last week. Just haven't. I'll leave it at that. It's just another stepping stone for them to build that foundation that they're working to build.
Yeah, and you do think about those particular circumstances, like Brian Callahan. It's not like he was fired by the Bengals. Like, they were probably thrilled for him to get this opportunity to come to Nashville. Yes, Chidobe Awuzie and Tyler Boyd, they weren't re-signed there, but I don't think there was any horrible break when it came to leaving there. It's not like AJ Brown spanking the goalpost is going to happen on Sunday.
He was traded away,
and wouldn't have signed. They wouldn't sign him to an extension, which I think probably didn't sit too well with AJ. We know it didn't sit too well with AJ.
Yeah.
There's a whole lot going on with AJ Brown up there in Philly right now, but we won't get into that here. This one is an interesting game because on paper, I think everyone would agree the Bengals are probably the better team, and they're playing better, at least on the offensive side. Joe Burrow's putting up MVP numbers.
Yeah, Chase.
But it doesn't seem like they can win games. Like, yes, they beat the Cowboys.
What's the defense?
Yes, and they're losing games 43-37 like that. Can the Titans keep up in this game? I think is going to be a big question. And the way the offense has been playing, I think that's going to be a tough ask for Will Levis and company.
It's going to be a huge ask for Levis and company to do that. And, I mean, you got to score in the red zone. It continues to be a serious thorn in their side. And, I mean, this goes back to John, the caller earlier, about playmakers, right? You need somebody when you're inside the 20 or, like, inside the 5. Hey, listen, we're going to take at least one shot. We're going to fade it up. And, hey, go get it. If you don't get it, draw the PI, and we're going to have a new set of downs at the 1 yard line. They don't have that, and that's the big problem. And that's why I don't think they'll be able to go ahead and run with the Bengals, so to speak, and get into a shootout with them because they don't have the firepower.
And T. Higgins has been a big talking point around Nashville over the past year with thoughts of him maybe coming back home. And he was a free agent last year, got tagged. He'll probably be a free agent again this year. It does feel like T. Higgins always has a little extra when he comes and plays the Titans. I remember that game.
Oak Ridge Finest.
That game, was it 2 years ago where the Titans hit the snapper on the field goal and ended up costing them a chance to go win the game at the end? I feel like I remember T. Higgins had like 150 yards and 2 touchdowns in that game. So he had an off game on Monday night, maybe 2 catches in that game against the Cowboys. And he had a pretty funny tweet after that. I guess there were a lot of people in his mentions talking about their fantasy team, and he said, "I know, guys, I know." So maybe he's looking for a bounce back game on Sunday back at home.
You can only do what you can with the targets that come your way, and they were all going to Chase that day. I mean, I think he got 18 targets or something crazy like that.
It's ridiculous, and I think that's going to be a big question. How do the Titans limit Jamar Chase? You won't have L'Jarius Sneed, obviously. It's either going to be Chidobe Awuzie or it's going to be Jarvis Brownlee. And I know what you're upset about. L'Jarius Sneed, I believe, told you that his favorite receiver to go against is Jamar Chase.
Yeah, this was early in the year, because we were just talking casually, and then I was like, "Yeah, man, you got a lineup this year," and I was like, "Chase," and he was like, and like you could tell, and he was like, "Yeah, I love going against him. I want to give him all the smoke, man." And we're not going to see it.
I know it's tough. Maybe we'll get to see Brownlee with him a lot. There's nobody's going to be shadowing anybody.
No, they'll play side.
The Titans don't have that type of corner. But
you're going to see all three because he plays both sides,
right?
And he
McCreary
plays nickel,
guard too. So it's going to be a team effort if you're going to limit Jamar Chase, which has been a tough ask for anybody.
And they've done typically like they'll high point the ball with Higgins on McCreary in this kind of game. They go after McCreary with Higgins with the taller wide receiver. I feel like they pick on him a little bit.
That I think I'm remembering from that same game I was talking about, like right at the pylon. McCreary did everything he could.
Yes.
He great coverage, but T. Higgins just right over the top.
Yep.
And that's what you need if you're going to be a great offense in this league. You've got options, and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, 2 different types of wide receivers, but they complement each other well. And you've got the distributor in Joe Burrow. The Titans offense right now doesn't have those options. And that's why this game, yes, the Bengals haven't been very good this year, but it just feels like a bad matchup on paper.
Oh, it doesn't feel like it is. It's a bad matchup. Like, this is a team that they score points. They're going to win this game. I mean, look, let's be real about this thing. They're going to win, right? And they're going to put up 30 points. It's just the way it goes, man. And when you have a quarterback playing the way Joe Burrow is, leading the league in passing yards and passing touchdowns, and you got Chase doing what he does. But then also, by the way, you got a guy at right defensive end, which faces your left tackle by the name of Trey Hendricks. He's leading the league in sacks. And that dude right there, you talk about the full repertoire as a pass rusher: speed is power, bend, flexibility, good hands, above all else, high motor. Like, that's a lot to deal with. You know what I mean? So, yeah, this is a terrible matchup.
Yeah, I don't know if it's going to be pretty on Sunday at Nissan Stadium. We're going to continue talking about this game coming up next. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport in for Jared Stillman today. Titans and Bengals on Sunday as the Titans look to avoid what would be their third 3-game losing streak of the season if they fall on Sunday. 102.5 The Game and Carmel Media have teamed up with the Nashville Predators for Coats for Kids, benefiting the Boys and Girls Club of Middle Tennessee. Starting on Monday, you can donate new or slightly used coats at the Game Studio and at the Ford Ice Centers in Antioch, Bellevue, and Clarksville. Also on Friday, December 20th, the game will be at the Ford Ice Center in Bellevue from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., taking donations, giving away swag, and tickets to an upcoming Preds game. Coat donations will also be accepted at the Preds home game at Bridgestone Arena on Saturday, December 21st. For more information, visit thegamenashville.com/coats. More Titans talk coming up next. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport in for Jared Stillman today. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
are getting 18 targets in a game, you know that the other team is coming into the game with his name circled at the top of the board to stop. That sense of futility, do you game plan similarly? Do you try to zig? How do you stop it?
I mean, it's pretty clear that you don't necessarily stop it. He's going to have, just like when we played, Justin Jefferson early in the year and some of these really good receivers. These guys are going to have they're going to make their plays. They're going to have their catches. They're going to get the ball thrown to them, and they're going to make the plays. You do your best to minimize the impact of them over the course of a game, and you do your best to make it difficult for them to catch the football and have targets. But there's no doubt that the ball is going to go, from number 9 to number 1 multiple times during the game. And you got to make sure you're just in the right position, that when he does have catches, that you get him on the ground and they don't turn into explosives. And you can keep a cap on some of those bigger plays that show up. So, yeah, you do your best to make it hard, but you know that the plays are going to come and the ball's going to him. And that's just part of playing against the great receivers in this league. And, he's certainly one of them.
That was Brian Callahan talking about Jamar Chase. Love the answer there. I think it's pretty clear. You don't stop him, but you can try and contain him. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport in for Jared Stillman today. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Want to remind you that coming up in the next segment, we're going to take your questions for Teron Davenport. Text or call 615-737-1025. TD, we talked about it a little bit in the last segment, that the way this Bengals offense works, there just isn't a whole lot of solutions to slow them down. If you find a way to slow down Jamar Chase, well, T. Higgins can still go off for 125 and 2 touchdowns. Chase Brown has been a really versatile option for them as a runner and as a receiver. They've got a trio of tight ends who can all make some plays. You mentioned Yoshivas. They have playmakers everywhere.
Yeah.
And the Titans are going to have their hands full on Sunday trying to slow down Chase and Higgins and all of them.
Well, yeah, bringing in Yoshivas helped alleviate the coming departure of Tyler Boyd. That's basically, he's slid into that number 3 role now. Are they going to be able to fill in for the possible loss of T. Higgins? I don't know, but they've put it together, and this is a team that, despite not having the offensive line that's really good, Joe Burrow makes it happen. And it's an example of what I said earlier, when you have playmakers, when you have erasers, these guys make up for a lack somewhere else. Right. And that's exactly what you're seeing. So with that, you got a quarterback and receiver tandem. They've been playing together for a while now, right? Because it dates back even to before NFL. And they picked up where they left off in the league, and they just continue to just be on the same page. Like, there was the touchdown, the outbreaking route against the Cowboys. It was an outbreaking route to the right. And I remember Chase, he put that outside foot in the ground. That ball is out, and he turned and he just went and got it. And that's symmetry. Like, that's the perfect relationship that you want in your receiver and quarterback.
Yeah, that ball was on him as his head turned around, and it does help that these guys have been playing together since college. They've got the chemistry, and the Titans will have their issues trying to slow them down. On the other side, this isn't a very good Bengals defense. We mentioned Trey Hendrickson is obviously a star pass rusher, but outside of that, there's not a whole lot that you like from the Bengals defense. Do we think we could see Will Levis, if the offensive line can keep him upright? Do we think we could see Will Levis rebound from what was a tough game against Jacksonville and get back to some of the progress that we saw in the previous games?
Look, at this point, I don't think you could say or expect anything positive from this team. Like, if something positive happens, it's like, okay,
great,
this is good, but if it doesn't happen, you can't be surprised.
Right.
They've proven that. And that's not me being a hater, me being a naysayer. It's just me speaking the truth. You cannot expect, what can you expect good from this team? You tell me one thing you can expect good from.
Yeah, Nick Folk.
Okay,
but
there you go.
He was.
Nick Folk.
It looks like he's going to be fine for
Yeah,
Sunday.
he said he's going to be fine, and he was full participant. That's about the only,
but this game's not
bad.
You can't win games in this game.
Not this one.
No.
This team they're putting up 28-30 a game. You can't like that's what's the saying? You can't bring a knife to a gunfight.
Mm-hmm. All the Titans have are knives right now. They don't have a gun.
A knife.
No,
And
you
Pollard's
make a
banged
good
up
po-
again.
I know.
So
Yeah.
ball control might be a little bit of a struggle.
That was the one thing I was thinking of was Pollard. They're for most games, Tony Pollard has been able to establish the run and be a positive force for this team. But yeah, outside of that, when you lose to the worst team in football at home, I guess you really can't expect much else because at that point you end up being the worst team in football. I still think the Giants and Raiders with their quarterback issues are probably worse, but you cannot be expected to win any game, even at home, against a bad defense with the way this team has been playing.
Yeah. But I mean, at least the Giants, like they got Bowers. That's a playmaker.
Right.
Or excuse me, the Raiders.
Raiders.
The Raiders. The Giants, they got
Giants,
neighbors, but
yeah.
Listen, I think, these franchises are in different places. The good thing for the Giants is they're primed for a sweep. So if you want to just get everything out of there and get fresh, same page GM and head coach, boom, you got the opportunity.
They're kind of a year ahead of the Titans, where this was the year where they were like, all right, we'll give them another shot. And it didn't work out.
It didn't work.
That as bad as Titans fans may feel about letting Derrick Henry walk, I think Giants fans feel about 10 times worse about letting Saquon Barkley walk. I mean, he is on track to break the NFL rushing record.
Yeah. And the difference is Barkley wanted to come back. He wanted to come back. We pretty much all knew that Derrick was gone.
Right. It was it was a different situation because Derrick had already signed a new contract here. Like he'd been here for 8 years.
Yeah.
And it felt like
both
sides realized that it was time to move on.
Yeah.
With Saquon, it's like, hey, I'll be a Giant for life if you can just make the money right. And Joe Shane said, what are we paying Daniel Jones for?
Yeah.
Well, you're paying
him not to play
for the Vikings now or be on the Vikings practice squad. I think that is one of these situations where I don't want to say dead man walking, but like Giants and Jaguars, it does feel like those two teams are getting ready for, cleaning house, for a lack of a better term. We'll see. Black Monday is about a month away, and we'll see all of the GM and head coach openings. But I think the Giants feels pretty safe to say that whoever is making that first or second or third overall pick for the Giants next year, it probably won't be Joe Shane and Brian Dable.
No, it probably won't be. And look, it's a good opportunity for somebody to go in there. I wonder, John Robinson. I wonder if he's in the mix for any of these next GM jobs. Ryan Cowden. I know he's interviewed so many times, but it's like that bridesmaid. Always a bridesmaid, never the bride. Maybe he gets his shot. He's in the organization already. Who knows?
Ryan Cowden. I believe I've seen him around Vanderbilt a couple times this year.
Oh, really?
Scouting some games. So I forget who is he with the Giants now?
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe that if they make an internal hire, but. Yeah, who knows? That is a good spot. You're going to have Malik Neighbors has proven that he looks like he's going to be a star, and you're going to have a top 2 or 3 pick most likely to possibly draft your quarterback of the future. Not a bad spot to be for whoever gets that job. But the Titans sadly have put themselves in that conversation with the Giants and Raiders as one of the bottom teams in the league. They will face the Bengals on Sunday. We're going to spend a lot more time tomorrow previewing that one as the Titans hope that they can get a win at home and snap this 2-game losing streak. But coming up next, we're going to have Ask TD. Any questions that you have for Teron Davenport? Again, this can be Titans related. We talked about the Heisman race. If you have college football questions, if you got Mets questions, TD is fired up. He's got his coffee cup with Mr. Met on there. Juan Soto heading to Queens. So if you got any questions for TD, make sure you send those to our text line or call 615-737-1025. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. What do we got on the stream?
That's the Soto.
Oh, there we go. Oh, yeah, the Soto announcement at Citi Field. TD's loving it. He came in here watching the Soto introductory press conference. I love it.
Terry McCormick, check your text message.
615-737-1025. Get in your questions for Teron Davenport. We will get to those next for the final half hour of this 4 o'clock hour here on Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game. Jake Lyman and Teron Davenport with you, sitting in for Jared Stillman today. Also, we'll be back tomorrow, 2 to 6. Hope you'll join us for that one as well as we wrap up the week. Time to get to some Ask TD. If you have questions for Teron Davenport, we want to hear from you. Text or call 615-737-1025 is the phone number. Our phone line's driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. TD will start on our text line. An unnamed texter wants to know, what are the chances of the Titans acquiring a true left tackle, either in the draft or free agency, and then flipping J.C. Latham back over to right tackle, which I guess in turn could solve right tackle. I don't think it makes a ton of sense, though.
No, I don't think it makes a ton of sense, and I would say slim to none. And it's not something that I would do, because now you're going through and having him deprogram and de-learn all the things that he has picked up to play left tackle, and it just wouldn't be a move.
Yeah, I think when you drafted him 7th overall, you said this is our left tackle. Flipping him back over after a year would possibly stunt his growth and make that. I mean, what would Jared say about taking a right tackle with the 7th overall pick? It's almost as bad as taking a guard 11th overall.
I think he would probably be happy as many times as they don't have a right tackle. I think
Yeah,
he would
maybe.
be happy with that.
He could be.
Conklin, what was he, 10th?
I think you look at Lane Johnson.
and I guess
Conklin, I want to
11th?
say was 8th.
Eighth,
Was it
that might be
eighth?
right. I
Right,
think
because
eighth
they
sounds
traded
right.
down from 1
Yeah.
to 13 and then back up to get him.
Yeah.
So I guess
because they traded with the
you
Eagles.
could.
He was all pro.
That is true.
Yeah,
His
I
first
mean,
round.
look, there's nothing wrong with having bookend. Like, I wouldn't be opposed to drafting a right tackle in the top 10. Like, I wouldn't be opposed.
No.
The Eagles did it with Lane Johnson years ago, and that offensive line has been good for years now.
true.
So it's okay. Guys rush on both sides of the line. So I think you're good there. I just don't. Look at the Chargers just did it with Joe Alt, right? And they
Yeah,
flipped him
to right tackle. Yeah.
I mean, Will Campbell, you flip him to right?
Yeah,
Sure.
could you
why
do that
not?
with him or Kelvin Banks and have them be your right tackle?
Right.
Like, it seems counterintuitive saying like, oh, we picked a right tackle in one year and made him our left tackle and then did the opposite the year after. But sometimes that's just who's available to you in a certain draft.
Yeah. And look, I still, remain that there's other ways that they could go about doing it, but I definitely don't flip
JC back. Yeah, I agree with you there. Austin from Clarksville says, TD, I really like the idea of Cam Ward. Thinks he could be a Steve McNair type quarterback with proper weapons. What are your thoughts?
I like Cam Ward as a player and as a prospect, but not for this team. There are a lot of things that are similar with Ward that you see with Levis. You see the hero ball. You see the putting the ball in harm's way sometimes. Now, Ward at college is so good that
It works.
It works, and it's not something that you harp on, but the facts are the facts. I think this franchise, the only quarterback I would take, period, in this draft is Shedeur Sanders.
Really?
The only one. And I sat in this chair next to Jared last month and I said Shedeur Sanders reminds me of C.J. Stroud in the quick processing, the accuracy, the never wavering, all of that. Enough athleticism to escape the pocket, extend the plays, get you 10, 12 yards if he needs to do that. They're the same player to me, and I'm talking about styles. But I think he also has that ability to have that instant impact, that it part of it. He has that. The only quarterback that you could get in this draft is one that is as close to a sure shot as possible. I don't think you have room to deal with the, plutonium level potential that Jalen Milroe has, but the question marks around, you can't. They have to get this quarterback thing right this year. Otherwise, they're going to be looking for new jobs.
That's a good point. And Milroe was going to be my next question to you, because I feel like if you traded back, and let's say you traded way back, picked up a first next year and picked mid-teens, maybe Milroe there. But you're right. If it is Rand Carthon making this pick and it is Brian Callahan as the coach, they can't afford a project at
You
this point.
can't think for the future. You got to think for now. A partial eye on the future, but your heart is on right now.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think you've got to find an instant impact quarterback, or you might as well just stick with Will Levis, who will be in his second year in the system and hopefully will take a
Just
stride
build around
forward.
it more.
More questions for TD. If you have one, text us or call us 615-737-1025. Another unnamed texter. Hey, TD, if they don't fire this coaching staff, do you think that they should change? He says, do you think we need a real OC? But I think what he means is, do you think Callahan should give up play calling duties?
I don't know that he should give up play calling duties. That's a tough call. I think Nick Holtz is a real OC. I think he has a pretty good understanding of things and a good relationship with the quarterback and the overall offense. I don't think that is really the big issue. I think really it's just allow Callahan to get experience as play calling. And next year, I would imagine, because I mean, you've even seen it this year where he's starting to be able to get into a groove where he's layering plays and he's doing something and tucking it away and then tweaking it. You look at a couple of NWI's touchdowns. Those were tweaks from previous games. These are the things that you want to see as a play caller. So I would say no. I think they're fine on the OC and play calling side of things, if you ask me.
There's one game that I'm forgetting who they played, but I remember the Titans ran like 3 screen passes early on. And then later on in the game, pump fake the screen, Nick Westbrook-Akine runs up the sideline for a touchdown. I have liked what I've seen from Brian Callahan as a play caller so far this year. I think the question with that would be, is his play calling taking away from his ability to do the other things that a head coach has to do? That's where I think it becomes an issue. I don't think he's a bad play caller. I think that's where it would be up to Brian Callahan to decide if he feels like he's being spread too thin with all of the responsibilities that he has.
Yeah, and I don't think he's being spread too thin. I think he's, not in the defense a lot. I'm curious, like the degree, how much he pops up in that room, but it seems like, with the veteran assistants and with Denard Wilson, first year DC, but plenty of experience, with the defense overall. I don't think that he's spread too thin. I think it's just an experience thing. And look, I just, no one in their first year, well, not many people in their first year are good at their job in their first year, are like outstanding at their job where there's no questions. I really firmly believe you give this man another year. I firmly believe that. And, people are saying clean house, fire Chad Brinker and Rand Carthon. And I don't see that as something that they should do either. I think it's again, a process, right? And we're so caught up in this microwave where everything has to be immediate. Things are not typically built instantly. And the things that are built instantly usually have a way of crumbling pretty fast. Give it time to build. That's all I'm saying. Now, if we're sitting at this point next year, yeah, you know what? They got to go. But right now, I'm not for that.
And that's where the question is, how much can they get better in this offseason? And that's what they're going to have to look at, is what can they do not only to get improved quarterback play, but to build around Will Levis moving forward. Speaking of Will Levis, Andrew on our text line says, let's pretend Will Levis is done for the year. No more games. So you're going with your evaluation of Will Levis right now. Would you go out and get a guy like Sam Darnold?
Not Sam Darnold. I'm not
Sam
going out
Darnold. Sam Darnold, I think, is in a class of his own because he's going to get a Baker Mayfield type contract this year.
Sam Darnold is in a good situation. He has an outstanding play caller. You have one very good receiver and one that is the second best in the league, because Jamar Chase is the best. Like, I'm not going to have that discussion. You know what I'm saying? He's the best. But that being said, you also got a pretty good tight end in TJ Hawkinson, and you got a back to catch the ball out of the backfield and be a threat running the ball in Aaron Jones. Like, it's a good situation for him. I don't just take and put that somewhere else and expect the same results. I'm sorry, I don't.
I think we are seeing the peak of Sam Darnold. Like, this is the best that he can be, which is pretty good. They're 11-2 this year, something like that.
11-2.
They're very good, and Sam Darnold has had a very good season, but I think this is all he is. Like, I think if you sign Sam Darnold to a 3 or 4 year contract, you know what you're getting at best, and that's this season. You're not getting anything better than this from Sam Darnold. I agree. I think if you're going to sign Sam Darnold, you might as well just stick with Will Levis. It's going to cost you less money, and there's going to be less commitment, and you can move on after the year. More questions for TD, 615-737-1025. You can text or call. We see some callers on the line, a lot of text to get to. We'll get to those coming up next. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport in for Jared Stillman today. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Closing out the third hour of the program today. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport in for Jared Stillman. Again, we'll be back tomorrow 2 to 6 as well to close out the week. We're doing a little Ask TD right now. Questions for Teron Davenport, you can text or call. 615-737-1025 is the phone number, and we head to our phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com right now. Let's start with Wes in Hermitage. He's got a question for TD about the Titans front office. Wes, what you got?
All right, so before I even ask the question, because I got two questions. TD, I don't get to talk to you as much as I wish that I could. So did either of y'all hear the question that I asked D-Mates yesterday?
I didn't. What was it?
Okay, so I've got a question for you, then a question for Jake, and then if y'all could answer a question together, it'll be really quick.
Okay, cool.
What is the job of Brian Callahan, and what is the job of Rand Carthon? That's for TD.
That is to win games, to get this. Callahan is to put this team in position to win games. Carthon is to build a roster that will help Callahan win games.
Okay, and then Jake, in your opinion, what is Burnett's job and what is Barry Trott's job?
I would say it's the exact same thing. Barry Trott's job is to build a roster for Andrew Burnett to help live up to its potential when it's actually out there competing.
Okay, and Barry Trotz has been with the Preds for 2 years. Rand Carthon's been with the Titans for 2 years. So here's my question. If that's the case, why is everybody screaming for Andrew Burnett's head, but yet they're not screaming for Callahan's head the way that they're screaming for they're screaming for Rand Carthon to be fired, but not Barry Trotz, I guess is the way that I'm trying to word that.
I think a good part of it is the Preds were a playoff, like they made the playoffs last year. So I think there's still, here's the thing. Hebrews 11:1, not to get biblical, but it talks about faith, and that's the trust in things that are unseen. That's what you got to have right now if you're, saying Carthon is not, because let's face it, the time here has not been good.
There's not a lot that you can point to as successes for Rand Carthon now.
But you could look at the Preds. I almost said the Flyers. Wow, man, Philly flashback. You could look at the Preds and say, hey, there is something that I can see that has happened before. So that's probably why.
And also, Barry Trotz has a reputation and a resume of like almost 3 decades in the NHL of success. I think that also helps him in that what you're getting from Barry Trotz, whereas Rand Carthon coming into this job was a relative unknown. I think the reputation of Barry Trotz does earn him a little bit of leeway from ownership as well.
Yeah, no doubt.
I like that. That makes a lot more sense to me. I appreciate it, guys. Merry Christmas to you.
Merry
Christmas for the call, Wes. Merry Christmas.
I'll say, look, man, I'll be very clear. Rand has not done a good enough job.
For sure.
Very clear. So this isn't don't put me in the, Rand Carthon club or anything I'll stand up for Rand just as much as anybody else because, I believe that he's going to get it right. But up to this point, it hasn't been good enough.
Right. And it's not like he hasn't taken swings at it. I know a lot of fan bases don't like their GMs, especially in baseball, for not doing anything, for not making moves to try and build the team. Rand Carthon has at least taken swings at it. They made a lot of big moves this offseason. They just haven't panned out the way people thought they would. I mean,
but they have to.
Legere, right.
The moves he makes this offseason have to pan out.
Yes, you can't have 2 off seasons in a row where people are looking at your big moves and saying, meh.
Yeah, they can't. It can't be that way.
He's going to have a big year this year. Back to our phone lines. Lance is on the line wanting to talk about the draft. Lance, go ahead.
Yeah, Teron, 2 quick questions. First one is, how many of the offensive line do you see will be good enough to be on next year's team and make the team and add to make the team better? The same thing for the defensive line, including the fat boys and the boys on the edges, and make the back end good of the defense, make the back end better, and also to make the skill players better. And who are those players you identify as those players that should be kept around and can be future Titans.
Okay,
and I'll
so
hang up and listen.
So Lance wants the trench player. So Latham, Skoronski. I honestly keep Brunskill around. I re-signed Radence.
You need a new right tackle.
Yeah,
I agree.
I'm just thinking about some of the other guys.
I agree. You keep Brunskill though, because you're going to be
yeah.
missing Cushenberry for
Yeah.
most of next season.
And that so you and Cushenberry, so 5 on up front. You know, I think Marlon Davidson when he comes back. You know, I think he's somebody you keep in the mix. Look, Sebastian Joseph Day does not get the flowers, but this dude is solid up front. In my opinion, they have to re-sign him. Sebastian Joseph Day, Sweat, Simmons. I bring Key back. I think you obviously Jalen Harrell because he's a draft pick. Harold Landry is going to be an interesting one. I think you keep him, but I want to say I don't know what his number. I'm assuming you're looking. I want to say it's around 18. I think you keep him, but look, if you draft somebody, you get your hands on an Abdul Carter. You get your hands on, you know, you might want to look at that number, but I don't think they're going to be cash strapped, so they could afford to have him and allow that deal to just kind of phase out. But those are the guys. Now, when we had to do team needs. A team need that, you know, I haven't really talked a lot about, and I haven't heard a lot of people talk a lot. Safety is a team need.
Right. Who else is there besides Monty Hooker?
I think, you know, and
the 1-year deal for Diggs.
And he's
right?
gone.
And he got hurt, so he'll be gone, right?
Yeah. Diggs is a 1-year deal.
Gone.
Yeah. So, I mean, do you bring him back? And can he come back full?
Right. Yeah, you'd have to re-sign him.
I think Diggs could come back, but I mean, I don't know. You know, so I definitely think safety is something you get one of these young safeties. That's why, like, yeah, there's some guys. I want to is Starks,
Georgia, yeah, Malachi Starks.
Is he?
Yeah, he's eligible.
If he comes up, but see, you don't pick that position high.
And then Ohio State, Caleb Downs, is he draft eligible? I don't know if he is. He might be a year out.
He is. I don't know.
But that's another guy who's going to be a stud safety coming out. But no, you're right. Amani Hooker is pretty much the only guy at safety that you have. I was actually laughing thinking about that, Ian, on the way in here, because I remember when the Titans signed Jamal Adams in the offseason, and you told me that Jared said to you that was a 4-hour topic, that he could get 4 hours out of Jamal Adams, who played he played 2 snaps or whatever it was with the Titans.
But it's the name.
It's just so funny. Jared can turn anything into a full show topic.
What? I mean, X-Files, man. Like he will get into, it's interesting.
I love it because, like, doing these 4-hour shows, planning for this and doing it, it's hard to come up with 4 hours worth of content to talk about.
He'll figure stuff out.
He could turn anything into 4 hours.
Yeah.
So a lot of respect to Jared for that. But yes, safety is a big need. Harold Landry's cap number next year is 24.
So I was under.
You would save 11 by cutting him.
I don't.
Maybe he's a restructure situation.
You see if you can kick it down the line. Although,
yes.
Normally at this time you will hear the cap's not real.
Restructure would only save you 2.8. So not a ton.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you lose Landry, then you got to get 2 pass rushers.
Right. Yeah, I still keep him. He's out of that after next year? 2026 is
yes, I believe
UFA?
That's his last year.
Yeah.
Let's see. 2026. Yeah, he's that might be he's under contract for 2026 too. That was a 5-year deal.
Okay, so what I would do, I draft an edge high. You hope that he could develop into somebody that could take over, and then you release Landry.
You save $18 million in 2026 if you cut him.
He'll be gone.
So
he'll be gone.
You would think.
So that's why it's all the more important to get a guy this year. And again, I say you never go into a round of the draft saying I have to get a guy this round. But I think you go into the first round with where you're likely going to fall, saying, okay, if we look at the board horizontally, this position is going to get a little more red outline than this one because of that.
And we were talking about how little the Titans have invested in wide receiver early in the draft. Think about how little they've invested in edge rusher early in the draft. Is it just Harold Landry in the last like 7 years who they've taken within the first 4 rounds? They took DeAndre Walker.
Because DeAndre Walker was a 5th round pick.
That was in the 5th round. And then Harold
Rashawn Evans, technically they could use him, but
he was an inside linebacker.
They used him in the middle.
But you were right though. There were thoughts of using him as an edge, but that was the same year as Landry. Yeah. It's been a while.
They and it all goes back to right tackle. They've taken 3 guys in the first 3 rounds over the last 5 years, thinking that was going to be their starting right tackle. None of them have panned out.
No.
And so they've had to keep getting more. Maybe you could have used one of those picks on an edge rusher or wide receiver.
We talk about one of those high picks, right? Dylan Radens, right guard. I would look at that, but what if Trey Smith becomes available?
Yeah. I know there are lots of Tennessee fans that are mad that the Titans passed on Trey Smith all those times back in
I'm not even a fan, and I'm mad at that. I was one of the ones that say, look, that's a move to make.
See, yeah, that one made sense. The Hooker over Levis one, I will never get over, because as much as I liked Hendon Hooker when he was at Virginia Tech, he's not an NFL starting quarterback. But I agree, the Titans should have taken Trey Smith in the draft. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. We've still got some questions for TD, so we will bleed over here into the 5 o'clock hour with some Ask TD. We'll take a few more questions on the other side. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport sitting in for Jared Stillman today. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063. The Game. Jake Lyman and Teron Davenport in for Jared Stillman today and tomorrow. We are broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. We are carrying over Ask TD from the last hour into this one. Last call for questions for Teron Davenport. You can text or call. 615-737-1025 is the phone number, and our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Lots of good interaction so far. Let's head back to the phone lines as Russell is with us, and I believe he's got a question about J.C. Latham for you, TD. Russell, what you got for us today?
Yeah, we've been looking for a right tackle for a long time. Why wouldn't we entertain putting Latham over to the right side where he played at Alabama if it's easier to find a left tackle and just look for a left tackle then?
Is it easier to find a left tackle?
Well, we've got left tackles in the last 5 years. We haven't had right tackles.
I mean, these guys in power aren't the ones that drafted Lewan. They're not the ones that had B-Hop. They're not the ones that had Michael Ruth.
Yeah, I'm not.
Oh, I hate that. I wish we. Hopefully.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, we lost you for a second. Come on.
Sorry, my back. Sorry. Am I here? You have me?
Yeah, we got you.
Okay. I was just saying, just logically, wouldn't it be easier? I mean, wouldn't you just say? I mean, wouldn't you entertain?
We can't understand.
Yeah,
hit the text line, man. No, he's driving.
Yeah, don't hit the text line while you're driving.
No, I get what he's saying, but I don't think it's easier to find a left tackle or a right. I think you just got to find a guy that fits what you want out of these positions and put him in there. You know, I think that's really the bottom line.
Yeah, and I do get what he's saying. Like, you look at the top of the draft and say, like, oh, Will Campbell and Kellen Banks, they're left tackles. Why would we not flip over the guy who played right tackle in college? But you've been trying to train J.C. Latham out of being a right tackle all year long. I don't think it makes sense to get rid of all those good habits that he's formed and throw him right back over to right tackle. I'm sure he could do it. Like, I don't think J.C. Latham would completely fall apart if they moved him back over to right tackle, but I feel like you made that decision when you drafted him. You said he's going to be our left tackle. He's played his whole rookie year at left tackle. Let him be the left tackle. I think that's what we're going to see. Maybe we'll see a left tackle flip to right. Maybe they'll find somebody who's played right tackle before. That's all to be seen in the offseason. Brian on our text line says, TD, if you were the GM, would Levis be your starting quarterback next year, or you're going with someone else?
Do I have the number one pick?
That's the question.
Yeah. If I have the number one pick, I'm going Shedeur. You know what I mean? And building around him, right? But if I don't, then yeah, I would have Levis another year and just build around Levis. I think regardless of what you do, you got to build around whoever is there at quarterback. I just think if a guy is capable of being the number one overall pick, I think you got to look at that upside as opposed to Levis, who I think Levis is a solid quarterback. I think he could be a playmaker. But I just think that number one pick, like, it's different.
If you have the number one pick and there's a quarterback there and you're not sold on your quarterback, you use the number one pick on a quarterback. You have to. But I agree with what you're saying. The other options out there just aren't all that appealing when there are some upsides to keeping Levis for another year, and you don't have to commit to him and get a new contract after this year. There's no risk to keeping Will Levis for another year. And if you don't have a better option out there, which unless you're getting Shedeur Sanders, your options are Cam Ward, Jalen Milroe, Quinn Ewers, Carson Beck in the draft, or, a long-term deal for Sam Darnold, or you bring in Daniel Jones or Jimmy Garoppolo, Justin Fields, maybe like that. I would just stick with Levis at that point. It's going to cost you less money, and there's no downside to doing it outside of, hey, maybe he's not very good, but you'll get another chance to find that out. But I agree with you. If you have the number one pick, I think you got to just get a quarterback. So we'll see what happens with that. That was Ask TD. Good stuff from the text line and phone line. Good questions for TD today. There is one question that I wanted to ask you, and we had this on the grid, and we're going to get to this next. Bill Belichick going to North Carolina. Thoughts?
It's going to be interesting. I would love to see his recruiting pitch. I hope that the game in college is different, right? Like it's a different creature. So I want to see how Belichick is able to do that. I mean, you got egos that you got to massage and things like that. When you're because guys this day and age, guys will up and leave. You know what I mean, and go get a deal somewhere else. And there's a lot of fishing and poaching going on. So how is he going to be able to keep that? That's the thing. I'm
Yeah,
curious.
you got to re-recruit your roster, and you've got all these tweets coming out, and we were joking about it earlier with South Carolina that X player has agreed to a new deal to stay at his school. It's like, man, is this what college football is coming to? And Belichick has thrown himself right into that. Nick Saban said, "I'm done with all of this last year."
Yeah.
He's like, "I'm not dealing with it," but Bill Belichick says, bring it on. He's heading to Chapel Hill. We're going to talk more about that coming up next. Bill Belichick going to be the next head coach at North Carolina. He was introduced today. We'll get more of TD's thoughts on that. And of course, you can always chime in. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. We'd love to hear from you. Text or call. Our phone line's driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport in today for Jared Stillman. Stillman & Company, 1025-1063 The Game.
there is an element of the college game where you got to fire these kids up. You have to be, there's a certain circus element to it. You don't have to be Brian Kelly, dancing and putting out weird videos.
Dude,
with players,
we need some of those with Belichick.
Yes,
though,
we do.
Right? Dancing,
Yeah, oh my God,
it's the
amazing.
same thing.
But
It's a great
right,
call.
there is definitely an element of that in the college game, and I'm like, where does Bill reach for that? I don't know. Now he's clearly in a relationship now where he's reaching younger people.
You had to go there. I wasn't going to go there.
Listen, okay, well, I'll just say with that too. No one's going to talk about it. No one's going to. It's not going to get trotted out there. But the NFL, particularly with head coaches, it's still an optics world. It's still you can and you think about the Bears. You think the McCaskey family, like Virginia McCaskey, like you don't think they're sitting there going, yeah, okay.
That was Charles Robinson with Robbie and Rex Road this morning, talking about Bill Belichick and his new role with North Carolina. The recruiting is going to be interesting with Bill Belichick because, he's dealing with 18 to 20-year-olds. And when you're recruiting, it's really 16, 17, 18-year-olds that you're trying to get to come play for you. Interesting to see how he's going to relate to that younger generation.
Is his girlfriend really 24?
She's in that range for sure. I don't know if she's 24.
That's creepy, man.
But yeah, certainly reaching the younger generation. Jake Lyman, Tehran Davenport, in
That's
for
almost
Jared
his
Stillman.
granddaughter's age.
Yeah,
What
it's
the hell?
like a 50-year age difference.
How old is Bill?
Yeah, we need to. We need some
You know what?
research
I'm
here.
not even gonna waste the energy on it. I don't care how old he is. It's creepy, but look, we're not here to talk about that.
Well, Bill Belichick is going to be the head coach at North Carolina, and I said yesterday before this became official, and it's crazy. We're only 24 hours away from being announced, and he is. He's already done his introductory press conference. He is officially the head coach at the University of North Carolina. I just cannot imagine him dealing with teenagers all the time. Like, his Patriot way was built on do your job and accountability. And that was being done by 25, 30, 35-year-olds. Is that going to work with 18, 19, 20-year-olds?
I think he is too abrasive for the younger athlete. And when I say younger athlete, I'm even talking about
Like
professional
rookies.
athlete.
Yeah.
I think he's just too abrasive. And it's just a different way you got to deal with guys now. And it just I don't see how. I hope it does work for his sake, but I don't see how it does.
Yeah, and the thought is that this is for his son, that he's going to do this for 3 years and then pass it down to his son to
Well,
become the head coach.
That's nuts.
But
That's nuts.
I don't know. I still don't understand it. And we had Jason Fitz and Caroline Fenton on yesterday, and both of them said the exact same thing, that they just don't get this for either side. Like, North Carolina just pushed out Mac Brown because he was 73 and they didn't like the direction the program was heading. You replace him with a 72-year-old. And Bill Belichick, Jason Fitz said that he doesn't think that there's any interest from the NFL world for Bill Belichick, because I think if there was, he would go back. He wants to become the all-time winningest coach in NFL history.
Yeah, I think if given a choice, he would coach in the NFL.
Maybe this is what he thinks his path back is if he shows success there. But like,
how? Like, why does Bill Belichick have to show he can coach in college?
He's won 6 Super
yeah.
Bowls. It's just a weird situation all around. And I don't know, like Joe and Charles were saying on the morning show, it's like, are we going to see the Brian Kelly recruiting videos of Bill Belichick on the spinning table doing points at the camera and posing for pictures with these recruits? Like, I just don't know if he's got that in him. I think it was Tom Brady was on the Fox NFL pregame show this week, and they had him and Edelman and Gronk talking about whether he could coach in college. And Brady's like, "This is going to be Bill's recruiting pitch to you. I don't know. Come here, play if you want. I don't really care. You can play for me if you want, but
we'll see if you can play. Yeah,
you come here. You might play. You might not. Like, who knows? Like it. I just don't see. He's going to have to hire a staff that knows how the college world works, and we've seen the last few years that Bill Belichick hiring a staff doesn't really seem to work out that well. You know, Matt Patricia and Joe Judge being his offensive coordinators. Do we think Josh McDaniels follows him down to Chapel Hill to be the OC?
I don't know what I don't know. But I tell you, if that's if North Carolina hired him with the handshake that Steve Belichick would, that's a mess. That's a mess. They got to do better than that. But woo, I'm just glad I don't have to touch any of that. I do like the idea of supposedly being a pipeline
to the
NFL.
being a
That's
developmental
cool,
program.
But how's North Carolina? They're gonna stand for that?
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying. Hey, listen.
It's one of those things where no one really seems to see the vision except for the people involved in it, and we'll see if they're right or everybody else is right. But I have a hard time seeing this working out for more than a year or two. Texter on our text line says Belichick wanted to get a college job to find his next girlfriend.
That's really creepy, though.
It is. It is. Maybe he's like Leo DiCaprio, where once they turn 25, he breaks up with them or something like that.
Hey, whatever floats your boat.
I just they're even entertained bringing him in. Like, I think he was a finalist for the Atlanta job, but nobody else really.
Well, they said at the end it was kind of a power struggle, and they were like, "Hey, he's going to come in and push us out." So they turned and were like, "Hey, look, no," and it was just that, a power struggle.
And that's what you have to find, a place that's going to let him come in and have roster control too, which is because he's not going to take a job where he doesn't have control of who the players are.
Right. Well, he got a job now that he could
right.
That's with a little NIL in his pocket.
Yeah, it seems like North Carolina said they've upped their fund for him. So North Carolina, I could see them competing in the ACC. The ACC is pretty wide open. Clemson doesn't seem willing to modernize their program and use the transfer portal. I don't know if SMU is going to turn into this powerhouse. They've got the money to do it, but is SMU really going to do much more than they did this year? Florida State is, who knows? They're up and down, clearly. So it's open. If Bill Belichick is able to turn that into a powerhouse, it could happen. I don't know if they're going to be a powerhouse nationally. They could win the ACC every year, but I don't see them surpassing the Georgias and the Alabamas of the world.
Well, this here you got was it Fox Sports 1, Keyshawn. Hey, what's up, homie? He's saying Belichick is disgusted in what the NFL has become.
It's like the opposite of Saban.
I think that is kind of like the guy who asks a shorty for her phone number, and she's like, no. He's like, go ahead, you weren't really cute anyway. That saying disgusted with what the NFL has become, I think that's the same thing, because you just wanted a job in the league last year.
Yeah.
So come on, man.
It's oh, you don't want me? I didn't want you in the first place.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Oh, you don't look. Go ahead, you didn't look good anyway. I hope you have a bad day.
The question they've got up there too is, will this hurt Bill Belichick's legacy? If the last thing that we remember of Bill Belichick is him running North Carolina into the ground, if that's what ends up happening, I don't think it'll hurt his legacy all that much. I still think he'll be remembered as the guy who had the Patriots dynasty, but I don't think it can really help him.
His legacy is already kind of messed up with the Brady situation.
Right. Yeah.
Some of the shine is already worn off.
That's a good point.
That's a good point, Ian.
And it's like, hey, I do think there is some people are already talking Belichick is overrated. We had a handful of those this week. Yeah. And,
and it's hard.
If it doesn't go well at North Carolina, I'm not sure that's going to change too much.
Throughout the whole Patriots dynasty, the question was Brady or Belichick, who's more important? And we got that answer in those few years after Brady left, where he went and won a Super Bowl, and Bill Belichick made the playoffs one time without Brady. And that was the game where the Bills did not get stopped the entire game. They scored a touchdown on every drive.
Yep.
And that was Mac Jones' rookie year. So we now know that it was more Brady than Belichick. You have to give Bill Belichick his due, though.
Listen,
he's a great coach.
Yeah.
You don't win 6 Super Bowls accidentally.
Can't take anything from him. He's a great coach, in the running for greatest of all time, without a doubt. Like, there's no taking away from that. And I'm confused why he made this move. I'm not going to say, I don't want to say North Carolina is beneath him, but it just doesn't seem. This is a move that I would see a coach that didn't have success in the league do. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I wouldn't see a guy who you mentioned with Bill Walsh and Bill Parcells and as Vince Lombardi will put the name in. Like, I wouldn't see a guy you mentioned in those. Funny thing is, Bill Walsh coached
He did.
Stanford at
Yeah,
the end of
he
his
did.
regime.
He went back to college.
Yeah, but I
Um,
mean, like, I just don't see that. You know what I mean?
Well, and like Matt Rule is a recent example of guy who failed in the NFL, went back to college and proved that he's more of a college coach. Usually you can't go back and forth. Like the NFL and college football, it's very rare to find a coach who can have success,
On
sustained
both.
success in
Yeah,
both.
yeah.
Like Pete Carroll's
Pete
tried to go
Carroll's
back
the
and
one
forth.
that I would say had it. You know what
The
I mean?
closest to
With
it,
SC
yeah.
and with Seattle.
Lane
Yeah.
Kiffin, he was the coach of the
Well,
Raiders.
Jimmy Johnson.
Jimmy Johnson too with Miami and Dallas. But it's very rare to find
Yeah.
somebody who can do both.
Yeah.
Maybe Bill Belichick is that guy. That's yet to be seen. I doubt it until I see it happen. But one of the stranger headlines that I think I would have ever seen is Bill Belichick is the next head coach at the University of North
Crazy.
Carolina. I saw somebody tweeted, if you had told me 5 years ago that a real headline for next year would be North Carolina head coach Bill Belichick heads to Stanford for conference road game, I think I would have thought you had gone crazy.
Yeah, I would think you were nuts.
That is what college football has become. And that is where we are. 30 minutes left in this show here. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport in for Jared Stillman today. It is Predators game day as the Preds are in Dallas taking on the Stars. Pre-game coverage coming up at 6. We'll talk more about the Preds later on in the show. Also from Music City Bowl, Scott Ramsey going to join us at the very end of the show. We'll also look at Thursday Night Football tonight, 49ers and Rams. But first, mentioned it is Preds game day. Preds will be back home here at Bridgestone Arena on Tuesday, December 17th, taking on the New York Rangers. If you want 2 tickets to that game, call right now, 615-737-1025. Caller number 3 will win a pair of tickets to see the Predators take on the Rangers at Bridgestone Arena next Tuesday, December 17th. Again, caller number 3, 615-737-1025. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport in for Jared Stillman today. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Getting towards the end of the show here on this Thursday. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport in for Jared today. We're back tomorrow, 2 to 6, same time on Friday. We'll wrap up the week for you here on the station, get you set for a full weekend of NFL football. You got Army-Navy. Heisman ceremony should be a fun one tomorrow from 2 to 6. We still got 30 minutes left with you here. We're going to speak with Scott Ramsey of the Music City Bowl coming up in our final segment. Also, get you ready for Preds game day pregame coverage coming up right after us at 6 o'clock as the Preds are in Dallas taking on the Stars. But first, TD, we got Thursday Night Football tonight, and this one is an interesting one. 49ers and Rams in what has been a crazy NFC West this year. I think everybody going into the year kind of thought the Niners would run away with it again. But right now, all four teams are kind of in contention. The Seahawks, I believe, currently are in first place, but the Cardinals are right there. This could be a big one in terms of the playoff picture in the NFC, in terms of who's able to get the win tonight.
Yeah, it's a huge one. I mean, you got Seattle sitting out there, Arizona. Like it's kind of like a 3-team race, right? When you talk about the NFC West, and it's just crazy because, like you say, you would have thought the 49ers would be the one, but injuries, because this was supposed to be kind of like the last dance.
Yeah,
right.
They've got so much.
It was the last. Yeah, there's so many guys that are up to get paid, and it was going to be tough with the quarterback,
with Purdy getting his
Brock
deal.
Purdy getting his. So it hasn't happened. I think the Rams, they're always going to be a good team, right? And I, by the way, love the way they paired Fisk and
Jared Verse.
And obviously, it's not going to make up for the loss of Aaron Donald, but it's been a pretty good pairing. I like the way they did that. Geno Smith is balling, but I think when you look at this game in particular, it's a rivalry, right? It's a rivalry game. I remember, doing a lot of 49er stuff. The Rams have always been a big rival, right? And so it's a big one, but I think it's going to come down to Rams and Seahawks to win the NFC West, and I'm going to go with the Seahawks. And by the way, Ernest Jones the fourth, man, or third, whatever. Ernest Jones the third, I believe. He's been doing this thing since he landed there in Seattle.
Yeah, I believe I saw Mina Kimes, who over at ESPN, and she's a big Seattle fan. She tweeted out last week, Seattle needs to sign Ernest Jones to an extension. I think he's been a big part of that defense, taking another step forward. It is weird to look at this 49ers team and see them below 500 with how much talent they have. You mentioned it's kind of the last dance because with Purdy on this 7th round pick contract up until the end of this year, they're going to have to give him an extension after this. But you've got probably a top 5 tight end in football in George Kittle. You've got 2 guys getting paid towards the top end of the wide receiver market with Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel. The best running back in football coming into the year, Christian McCaffrey. The best left tackle in football in Trent Williams. The best linebacker in football in Fred Warner. Nick Bosa on the other side. Who is the defensive tackle? I think he's out for the year, who they signed over from Philly.
Javon Hargrave.
Javon Hargrave.
He started with the Steelers.
Talanoa Hufanga. They have so much talent on that team, but it's injuries, and they just haven't been able to put it all together.
Yeah.
Brandon Ayuk out for the year. Christian McCaffrey out for the year. Deebo Samuel hasn't been quite as good as they've been used to him being.
And that's where I was going, man. My darn fantasy team, man. Deebo killing me, boy.
He killed me last week, too. Deebo,
Jennings has been stepping up for them.
Right, yeah, Juwan Jennings. He had 2 touchdowns last week. Like the former Vol has gone from it. I kind of put him in the same category as Nick Westbrook-Akine. I think Jennings has established himself a little bit more with what he's done the past few years, but kind of in the same boat of you don't put them in the wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 conversation, but they put up stats and they score touchdowns for you like anybody else. Like Juwan Jennings, right now, I think you'd have a hard time saying that he's not the best receiver who's available for the 49ers right now with the way Deebo Samuel's playing.
The deal he got is right along the lines of what I would say Nick Westbrook-Akine should be getting. I think it was like 7.5 per 2 years. I think, a 3-year, 2 to 3 year deal.
Yeah, 2 years, $15 million.
I think is probably where NWI needs to end up, but he needs to be back.
That's where I was thinking, like 3 years, $24 million. somewhere around there for
Yeah.
Nick Westbrook-Akine. I think that might get it done. And
It should.
it should get it
That
done.
might be too much.
Yeah.
3 years, 24 guarantee, 18.
Yeah,
over the
I don't
3 year.
know. I don't know if I can pay him 8 per.
You think 21
He's
if
got
you went
8
down to
touchdowns
7?
this year.
Yeah, I know that.
Yeah. I know the numbers are good. And maybe someone will pay him, but
That and
do you really want to overpay him as your number 2, even though he's not really a true number 2?
You've got to outbid if Vrabel gets another job. You got to outbid Vrabel for him because Vrabel's going to offer him like $20 million a year.
I don't see what's wrong with 7.5 to 8 per for him. I think that's reasonable.
Okay.
But it's really because if you don't keep him, what do you do? Like,
Yeah, who else is under contract next year? Ridley, Jackson, Burks.
You bring Bryce Oliver
Bryce
back.
Oliver.
I think Bryce has a future. You draft.
Yeah, you draft somebody, you sign somebody, but yeah, you have.
I mean, I'd like to keep him, but I don't want to overpay to keep him.
Yeah. No, I get it. I just wonder what would be considered an overpay. Like
That's fair. Yeah,
I'm not going 10 million a year. You go ahead somewhere with that. But I'll go 7.5 to 8.
Okay.
I'll do that.
I'm highly doubting that SpotTrack has a market value for Nick Westbrook-Akine, but I figured it can't hurt to look up.
I mean, the guy is 3rd in the league in touchdowns. Tied with Kittle. Like he's doing something. But I get what Ian's saying is that be cautious. Don't get caught up in.
Yeah, so he's making $2 million a year this year. Right
so
around.
A $6 million bump based off of what he's done, I think that's reasonable.
Yeah, I would go 7 to 8. I don't think if it gets to 10, that's way too much.
Like I said, it gets to 10, man. Go ahead somewhere.
That's when Mike Vrabel has joined the bidding. He's gonna go get Nick Westbrook-Akine and all of his other guys. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport in for Jared Stillman. When we come back, we're gonna wrap up the show, talk some Preds as it is game day down in Dallas for the Nashville Predators, and also speak to Scott Ramsey of the Music City Bowl. That's up next. You're on Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Preds hockey night in Smashville.
Walk over to Yossi. His one-timer, he scores!
Bringing you the keys to victory and the latest storylines surrounding the Nashville Predators. This is Predators Game Day, now on Stillman and Company.
It is Predators Game Day, brought to you by TJ Anderson Homes of Benchmark Realty. List your home with TJ to get your home seen, heard, and sold. Predators taking on Dallas tonight, taking on the Stars, first of two quick road games, taking on the Stars and then the Avalanche over the weekend before returning home for 4 straight. Max Hers talked with Andrew Burnett earlier today, previewing this matchup with Dallas.
Yeah, they're buzzing. They buzz here at home ice quite a bit, and they're feeling good about their game, obviously. So it's going to be a big challenge, and every night we say the same thing. And hopefully tonight's the night that we can leave the building feeling a little better about ourselves.
Big one tonight for the Preds, trying to snap an 8-game losing streak against Dallas. It has been a tough go of it for Nashville over the past couple of weeks, really all season, and Coach Burnett trying to get this team back on the right track on the road. You can tune in with Max and Hal coming up. Puck drop is at 7. Robbie Stanley will have the pregame coverage coming up right after this at 6. And again, it's Predators Game Day, brought to you by TJ Anderson Homes of Benchmark Realty. Jake Lyman and Teron Davenport in for Jared Stillman today. TD, you been keeping up with the Preds at all over the last couple of weeks?
Somewhat. I pop in at the games every once in a while. I know it's still taking a bit for them to get everything, some of the new pieces and stuff. It's taking a while to get that going. Stamkos, obviously, the big addition, and it just hasn't been good. I guess that's the nice way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, they made all of these moves, and we had the caller earlier asking why Trotz and Carthon aren't being talked about the same way. I mean, Trotz made some big swings, getting proven winners, proven goal scorers in Steven Stamkos and Jonathan Marchessault, as well as Brady Shea on the blue line, and they just haven't meshed well so far.
Yeah.
We did see some progress on Tuesday night. I was over at the game on Tuesday, and Jonathan Marchessault, who got off to a really slow start to the season, he had 2 goals, and they had the top line with Forsberg, Stamkos, Marchessault, and it seems like they're sticking with that tonight, even with Gus Nyquist back in the lineup. So I think maybe that could be a spark for this team, but these are 2 tough games this weekend, heading on the road, facing Dallas and then Colorado. And then you come back, and before Christmas, you've got 4 straight home games. Kind of feels like that's where things have to turn around if the Preds are going to start moving this back towards the right track.
Yeah, and that's the key. These home games, they got to make Bridgestone Arena a place that, gives you the advantage, and it hasn't been that, and that's a big problem. And, look, this city, they've proven when you win, they're going to support your hockey team major. I honestly would venture to say that Nashville, and I tell people when they ask me about Nashville, I say, it's the hockey team. They may have rule over everything.
When the hockey team is good, it's hard to beat it.
It's hard. And look, I tell you, it is very exciting to be in that arena too, man. You get the power play, and you got the DMX playing, and then the goal, they score a goal. Tim McGraw, it's a little party. Like you're in there, like yeah. So it is something that is fun to be in, and I know the fans, like, they just want to win. You see so many Preds flags all over the place and stuff like that. This city embraces them. Now they got to reward them with some wins.
Right. We saw it last year when they went on that 18-game point streak and made it to the playoffs. That building started to come alive again. I know that they are currently tied for the worst record in the NHL, but if they can find some magic like that again, the fans are going to come out and they're going to support. And maybe this little stretch before Christmas is what they need to get things started to turn around again. We've got puck drop coming up in Dallas in about an hour, little over an hour. Robbie Stanley is going to take over after us with pregame coverage, and then it'll be Max Hers and Hal Gill out there in Dallas. First of 2 on the road. Colorado coming up on Saturday, and then back home taking on the Rangers on Tuesday. Preds, they're in a similar spot with the Titans right now, where all the talk in the offseason was about this team's going to be good. Look at the moves we made in the offseason, and it's been disappointing. But the good news is for the Predators, it's not a 17-game season. They've still got 53 games left to go. I think they played 29. So yeah, 50,
but that's
like,
the thing.
You've got so much
earlier
time
in the process. Like it is reasonable to say, okay, a run could be put together and to respectability. This thing that they got over there at Nissan Stadium,
right?
Like, it's not respectable.
And that's kind of where it is. It's like, yes, the Preds put themselves in a hole starting 0-5.
Mm-hmm.
But if the Titans start 0-5, which they started 1-4, each one of those games for the Titans is like 5 hockey games.
But let me say this, because I think, and I will admit being part of the guilty party, a lot of us, we present. Now, I didn't say they'll win the AFC South, but I felt that they would compete.
They would
for
be
a playoff.
They'd be in the graphic
right?
of in the hunt at this point.
I think you gotta remember this. They restarted. Like, the reset button was hit.
Yep.
Ryan Tannehill gone. Derrick Henry gone. Kevin Byard gone.
New coach.
New coach. Mike Vrabel gone. So if you say from 2018 to 2023, who do you think of when you think of the Titans? The names that you would say
Not
outside
here
of Jeffrey Simmons?
Yeah.
They're gone. Oh, by the way, Taylor Lewan is another one you would say, but I mean, he's been gone for a couple years. But to my point, the reset button, we got to remember the franchise reset. Not all resets are like what the Texans were able to do.
Yep.
It takes time. And that's really my point. It takes time.
No, and I'm with you. I think the disconnect is where, people were talking like this team was going to win the AFC South, and that's just not reasonable to expect when, again, you're resetting an era. You mentioned Taylor Lewan. Maybe what the Preds need is to get Lewan chugging a beer out of a catfish at a game again.
That never hurts.
It never hurts. Last year it was him and his daughter, right?
Yeah, his daughter.
She was chugging water.
That's
too funny.
It's Lewan. He's a character. And I'm glad that he and Compton are still around Nashville a little bit, because they do bring a little bit of fun to that stuff.
I remember talking to Will Locker Cleanout 2019, and he was like, "Man, I don't know. I've been thinking about this radio thing, this podcast thing." I'm like, "Man, you got it. You just gotta act like it's just me and you just sitting here talking." Like,
right.
He's killed it. He's
I know.
done a great job.
They're crushing it.
Yeah.
And now we need to get Lewan out there at Bridgestone next week.
There you go.
We need Lewan chugging a beer. That is what the Predators need if they're going to get back in the winning column. They're going to try and do it tonight out in Dallas. First of a quick 2-game road trip. Preds and Stars is coming up right after us. It'll be Max and Hal out in Dallas. Robbie Stanley takes over with pregame right now. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport will be back for Jared tomorrow from 2 to 6 here on 102.5 and 106.3 The Game.